Good evening. Tonight is February 25th, 2021. It is 7:04 p.m. I'm Helen Picard, Chair of the North Andover School Committee, and I'm calling this meeting to order. I'd ask you to rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I would remind everybody that this meeting is being recorded and to please silence your devices. And I'm going to read the governor's order. Before we get started, pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing a strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the North Andover School Committee may be conducted via remote participation by some or all committee members and staff, as well as others involved in the meeting. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.northandoverma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to hear the meeting may do so on their television by tuning to Comcast 99 or Verizon 28 or online www.northandovercam.org. No in-person attendance of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technical means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite our best efforts, we will post on the school committee website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of the proceedings as soon as possible. I think it's also being live streamed via North Andover Cam on their YouTube station. Excellent, thank you. So I want to remind everybody who's in the room to please speak into their microphones, and everyone who's joining remotely to please mute unless you're speaking. And I would just let everybody know that I'm getting self-feedback, so that's a little confusing to me sometimes, and I will ask your indulgence if I seem to get distracted. So we'll start the meeting with roll call, and I will call the members, and if when your name is called, just please reply in the affirmative, and I'll start with Ms. Lynch.
Here.
Mr. Teresi?
Here.
Mr. McDevitt?
Here.
Ms. Mabley?
here.
Thank you, and I am going to turn to Dr. Gilligan to introduce his folks.
Great. Dr. Mealy, Assistant Superintendent.
Is here.
Ms. Marks, Assistant Superintendent.
Here.
Cheryl Bazak, Nurse Administrator, Director of Health and Wellness.
Here.
Our school physician, Dr. Kenny Chan.
Here.
Terrific. Our Special Education Director, Marcy Bacuzzi.
Here.
And then our principals, we have Ms. Goddard from the Bradstreet.
Here.
And then we have Miss Leahy from the Sargent.
Here.
Miss O'Loughlin from the Atkinson.
Here.
Mr. Cushing from the Kittredge.
Here.
Mr. Clark from the Franklin.
Here.
Mr. Raymond from the private Albert E. Thompson.
Here.
Mr. Gonsalves from the North Andover Middle School.
Here.
And high school principal, Mr. Chet Jackson.
Here.
All right, I believe I have everyone.
And the students.
Student.
Oh, and our students, we have Eamon and Mika.
Here.
I'm also here.
Terrific.
And then also joining us is Student Council President Kate Lovett.
Mm-hmm.
Hi,
and,
Kate.
And Student Ambassadors Leader Mia Muse.
Hello.
Hi, Mia.
Awesome. Welcome, and
All
thanks
right.
for being here.
Is there anyone on the call that we did not call by name? Good, we haven't missed anybody. All right, so our first order of business is public comment. And we do have some folks who want to be called into the meeting to make their comment. We have 3 people who want to call into the meeting, so I'm going to call them now. And then we have, just to let you all know, I think we have 27 or 28 comments that were submitted. And I don't think we're going to get to all of them, but after the call-in ones, I'll just start reading through them. Some of them are quite short, so we'll do our best to get through as many as we can. So if you'll excuse me for a moment, I'm going to call in our first commenter.
Hello?
Hello, Mr. Hicks. This is Helen Picard, Chair of the North Andover School Committee, and you are on the line for your public comment. If you can start with your residential address, please.
49 Brad Street Road.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. As a concerned parent and educator and as a candidate for school committee, I value transparency and open communication. So I believe it is only fair that I share with you my thoughts regarding the safe return of our students to in-person learning. Creating safe and welcoming schools that meet the needs of our students has always been our mandate. How we ensure student needs are met in the current climate requires careful planning. In such an extraordinary time, the community requires even more open and transparent communication about how our schools are meeting this challenge. Families are struggling in so many ways. My son is on an IEP for a specific learning disability in reading. He is currently reading below grade level, and while he is making progress, I worry about how much time has been lost and the potential impact on his future ability to engage in learning. I worry about my daughter and her ability to maintain friendships with other kids while she only gets to interact with her peers twice a week. Their teachers have been amazing, and despite these challenges, they have done incredible work ensuring that all of our kids have had a positive experience. Thank you so much to Mrs. Bayless, Mrs. DeFrea, and all of the Atkinson for this very hard work. I understand all the issues that the administration is facing and all the constraints that must be addressed. I also know that while there are many parents asking for a return to full-time in-person learning, there are many parents that want kids to stay at home in the current model for the time being. Regardless, all of our families deserve to know more about what comes next. The lack of information and evidence of careful planning has been infuriating. Our next steps must be data-driven and rooted in science and reflect the needs of our community. I am happy tonight that we will learn of a plan and that community feedback will be solicited. I hope that addresses these important questions. What would it take to reopen our schools for full in-person learning? What are the obstacles prohibiting this move at this time? What potential staffing and space challenges need to be addressed to make this attainable? What specific metrics are being used to measure transmission in schools to determine the transition between models of learning and to return to full-time in-person learning? What further steps can be taken to ensure that faculty and staff are safe and able to receive vaccinations quickly? To be clear, the superintendent and the school committee owe the community answers to these questions. Carefully planning for the future with transparent and open communication is how we can build a better future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. If you can hang up, we will get our next caller in. Thank you. Is this Pam Pietrowski?
Yes.
Pam, you're on the air with the North Andover School Committee. This is Helen Picard. Please start with your residential address and you can go straight into your public comment and you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay, my address is 73 Pleasant Street. And I'm calling in today as a concerned parent, citizen, educator, and as a candidate running for school committee. And I hope to be part of your team in the next several weeks and we can work together to move our schools forward. As the one-year mark of the pandemic approaches, our schools have been spotlighted for being the backbone of our community. Our schools have held together our society for so long, and now What works for one may not work for another. And still, public education must be accessible for all. There are no easy answers moving forward, but we must do just that. We must move forward. Parents need to plan. Children need stability and consistency. I have felt the effects of the pandemic as a teacher who's struggling to engage her students through a screen and in person every day. And I've had my heartstrings pulled when I learned that my 9th grader had a hard time focusing on her own schoolwork because she spent so much time helping her 4th grade sister. I've had calls from my 4th grader in tears because she didn't understand an assignment, and I had to push off her questions because I was desperate. I was desperately trying to engage my students who are watching their own siblings through a screen in my remote class. I watched my son, a senior, miss out on so many milestones in his last year in public school. I get it. I get all of it. In times of struggle and uncertainty, we must band together and find common ground. Public education must be made available to all children, all learners, and all grade levels. We are stuck between a rock and a hard place with a lack of resources, conflicting information from the state level, and demand for answers from our community members. In order to move forward, we must consistently share information so we can work together to find common ground. There is no one-size-fits-all for this situation. There is an abundance of research highlighting the negative impact the pandemic and remote learning is having on our children, yet there is equal research urging extreme caution to opening our schools. The guidance from the CDC and DESE seems conflicting and confusing at best. Everyone has different needs, yet so many are depending on our schools to meet those needs. I'm glad to see that plans have started and data is being collected. I urge you to continue these efforts and continue to share plans with community members and parents. When plans are not communicated clearly during uncertain times like these, tensions rise, fears are magnified and projected in unproductive ways. Let's continue to work and have productive conversations and create sustainable plans with timelines that allow our families, teachers, and students to plan accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. If you can hang up the phone now, I will call the next public comment person.
Great. Okay, thank you.
I live in fear of calling the wrong number. Hello, is this Mr. Brown?
It is. Hi.
Hi, this is Helen Picard, and you are on the air with the North Andover School Committee, and I would ask you to start with your residential address and go straight into your public comment, and you will have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is David Brown. I live at 35 Old Farm Road, and I am a candidate for school committee. There's been a great deal of activity this week concerning the state of the schools in North Andover, and there are groups of concerned parents and other residents on social media with the stated goal of getting kids back in school safely as soon as possible. There's multiple petitions circulating and instructing the school committee to get kids back in school full-time. And while clearly these are important goals, parents are upset, and there's ample evidence that real damage is occurring to the children under these conditions. It's been stated many times that you as a committee and the administration of the schools have the same goals of a safe return to school as much and as soon as possible. I'm certain that's true. Furthermore, no matter what course of action you take, some will like it and some will not. It will be too fast for some and too slow for others. I further recognize that this is a problem with a lot of moving parts, and there are constraints we have to follow, such as labor contracts, public health directives, DESE regulations, and so on. And despite that, there's certainly room for improvement. And I would urge you to direct the administration to come up with creative solutions to move towards full in-person learning quickly and safely. And even if 100% in-person cannot be achieved safely, there must be ways to get closer than we are now. And I'm happy to share my ideas with anyone who reaches out to me. I'm a big believer in public elementary and secondary education. I think it provides the best possible preparation for life as an adult in the real world. All three of my children were educated here in town, kindergarten through 12th grade, the youngest just finishing in 2019. They all did well in our system. We lived through the very tough years of 2006 and 2007, and we were active, my wife and myself, in the efforts to get an override passed so that the schools could recover. And with a lot of work, that effort was successful. As a town, I know we can get through the current crisis, and we will, and if I am fortunate enough to be elected as a school committee member, I will work even harder to see that happen. Once the current crisis is passed, even more hard work lies ahead, and we can't forget that, to address the ongoing needs for improvement. And we definitely should not forget that either. As candidate for public office, I feel I should keep myself as an independent voice in these matters. I participated in the recent public forum that this committee held on January 28th, during which time I pressed the administration for more details on their budgets and planning around addressing COVID learning gaps during the remainder of this school year, as well as going forward, which I believe is critically important. I also participated as a member of the public in the Facilities Planning Subcommittee's recent meetings, where they're addressing the need to increase our capacity in the immediate future. I will continue to make my voice heard by contributing public input at school committee meetings, selectmen's meetings, and any appropriate subcommittee meetings. As a candidate, my pledge is to fairly advocate for all in-town residents, as well as contribute my own expertise to help the district better plan and execute for all students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. If you can hang up your phone, then I will get on to reading the public comments that were submitted via the form and via email. It is now 7:21. We started this at about 7:10. So I'll plan to end reading public comment at 7:30. I assume there are going to be some that we don't get to. And what we have done when we've had more public comment submitted via the form is to share that in the minutes, link the information to the minutes. So that will be our plan if we don't get through everything. So the first, and these are just read in the order that they're submitted on the form. Leah Collar of 85 Lancaster Road writes, hello, I'd like to submit public comment on behalf of my hybrid first grader and my hybrid third grader. Sorry, I have to make this wider. In their words, this is why they want to be back in school full time. I think their voices need to be heard, and the innocence in their responses truly reflect how much they miss their normal school routine. On behalf of my Franklin Dragons, please listen and start fighting for the kids and their needs. Routine is a key essential in younger years. My friends even turn from a distance, help nurture their growth and development, and they are being deprived. There is an element of stress in this work they need to do at home without quick access to their teachers that my daughter speaks about that really hit me. She doesn't show it, but it's there in her words. It's time to put the children first and wear masks and proper hygiene to the best of our ability and move forward. Madison, third grade, I want to go back to school 5 days because then I would get to see all my friends in different cohorts. During school at home, I feel stressed because I have questions, and then I have to wait a long time to get help, and then I do not want to finish my work. I miss my friends and my teacher, and I like when I get to see Miss Teacher's name. It says that teacher's name in quotes, even if we wear masks, because I can still see her face enough, and I really just like school better than at home where I have to do everything by myself. MJ, first grade, I want to go to school because I'm bored. I do not like doing schoolwork with my mom. My quote teacher name unquote is fun because she lets us tell her about our day, and I can hear what my friends say. I want to play with my friends every day at recess. I love recess. I do not even like to do my schoolwork at home. I like to get lunch at school, and pizza is my favorite, and my friends like it too. I will get lunch every day at school when I go back in all the time. Thank you, Ms. Collar and children. Our next public comment is from Allison Segul, 23 Forest Street. I would like to submit the following public comment from my children. We love and deeply appreciate our teachers who do so much hard work to make the best possible of the current model, but the current model has been very difficult. I wanted to take an opportunity to share this from my children in their own words. My name is Aiden. I am 8 and I am a 3rd grader at Sargent School. It is really hard to do schoolwork at home. I want more in-person days because it keeps getting harder and harder to learn. I can't focus, and when I don't understand things, I can't raise my hand and ask my teacher, but I still have to get my work done for the day. When I work from home, I'm bored and I miss school. My hands hurt from clicking so much on the Chromebook, and I am home more than in school. I am home more, but I can't be with my siblings because I have work to do, and there's no fun, only work. I don't like looking at and talking to a screen, and I miss everyone. When I am in person, I am not distracted, and my teachers are with me to help me when I need it. In person is so much easier to do everything. I like reading and writing, and if I am in person, I like recess and being with my teachers and friends. Full remote days, I am looking at everyone on the Chromebook, and it's confusing for me, and things load slowly. If I need to do school, I want to be in person with my teachers so they can help me and my friends learn together. I love being in person, but it's very hard at home. I want to write better, but that's too hard at home. If I could have school anyway, I would have it in person every day and eat lunch in the cafeteria again. My name is Ava. I am 6 and I am a 1st grader at Sargent School. It is hard learning from home because in person, I get to see my teacher and friends, but at home I can't. School from home is hard. I can't talk to my teachers. I have to do all my work alone on the screen, and my brothers distract me. In person, I can see the board and understand the work. In person, I am happy to see everyone. We all learn together. My friends and I get to work with each other and play at recess. I love learning and reading, but doing it on the computer alone is hard for me, and it makes me not like it. I'm sad when I'm home and I have work. I could have school anyway. I would make every day an in-person day, make sure everyone got the same amount of attention, and make school and recess longer. The next comment is from Hayden McAdoo of 278 Waverly Road in North Andover. Hayden is in 2nd grade, 7 years old. It's not fun that I can't go to school 5 days a week anymore. I can't see all my friends anymore because more than half are in the other cohort. It's not fun doing schoolwork from home because it takes longer. There are so many things I need to do because I don't have a teacher to help me with it. And at home, and sometimes I get confused. My mom has to work from home. We also need to drive during the day to my brother's appointments. This makes it harder for me to do my work. There are so many things to do on the days I am home, and I feel stressed, especially on Sunday nights, knowing I need to get it all done in time to be able to go to dance school. And then it's dinner and bed. My day would be less stressful if I didn't have school at home. I also miss seeing my teacher. We had 2 snow days and a substitute. I just feel like the world doesn't want me to go to school. I feel really sad. The next comment is from David Evangelista, 28 Morningside Lane. And it reads, the parents and children of North Andover are becoming increasingly frustrated by the lack of progress being made by the school committee and the administration towards getting students back in the classroom full time. Equally as frustrating is the complete lack of plan and transparency. This leads to rumors, assumptions, and anger. Tonight, we peacefully demonstrate outside your meeting in hopes of raising more awareness of our concerns. We demand a plan and transparency going forward. It is disturbing to watch other districts present plans, move forward with opening, and work towards a common goal while North Andover sits idle. This must change immediately if we truly want the best for our children and educators. The following parents will go on record supporting these concerns, and there's a list of 122 names if I counted correctly. I will not read those all for the point of time here. It's 7:28. I'm gonna keep going. This is from the North Andover Public Schools Music Department at 495 Main Street. Dear school committee members, we, the undersigned members of the North Andover Public School Music Department, are writing to you regarding our current restrictions on indoor singing and musical theater activities in Massachusetts public schools. Current DESE guidelines do not allow singing to take place indoors under any circumstances. The playing of instruments has been permitted indoors using masks, distancing, and time limits since October. Recently, the MIAA approved football and cheerleading to begin. It's disconcerting to see high contact sports to be allowed to proceed while singers must remain silent. We respectfully request that the school committee send a letter to the DESE Commissioner Jeff Riley supporting vocal music and performing students as well as their teachers in their efforts to ease restrictions so that singing can safely take place indoors. A recent performing arts aerosol study was conducted by the University of Colorado indicating that singers emit the same amount of aerosol as wind and brass instruments. We believe we can safely sing using the same precautions instrument classes are using as recommended by the Colorado study. We believe that allowing singing indoors is the best last piece of what would be considered normal in this difficult school year, aside from reopening in full. Our music program is a source of tremendous pride within North Andover, and we should be treated as such. Our students have missed out on concerts, competitions, and the camaraderie of rehearsals both in and out of school and the joy of making music together. We believe that with your support as a committee and the support of the school committees across the state, we will be more successful in advocating for timely change. March is Music in Our Schools Month, and we would like nothing more than to celebrate accordingly in our schools. Respectfully submitted, and it's Andrea Liakos, Chris Nelson, Matt Inos, Emily McDougall, Hannah Honzinski, and Sarah Durkin, and Justin Smalley. Where are we? It's 7:30. I'm on comment number 9, and there are 20 some. There are a number of comments from students with a lot of different points of view, but I feel that we need to move on with our work of the evening. So unless I hear some objection from the school committee members, we will move on to the next. And I will share this document with the school committee members, and as I say, it will be attached to our minutes. Hearing no objections, I'm moving on to the consent agenda, which is the approval of minutes from February 4th, and I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes as presented in the packet. Are you there, school committee members?
I said yes, so moved.
Thank you.
And Andrew
Okay.
said second.
Okay, great. There was no sound where I was for a moment. So moved by Ms. Mabley, seconded by Mr. McDevitt. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote. Ms. Lynch?
Yes.
Mr. Teresi?
Yes.
Ms. Mabley?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, so that's 5-0 in favor of the minutes as presented in the packet from February 4th. And we are on to our student report, and I will call on Mika or Eamon to go right ahead and start.
Perfect, thank you. So we know tonight might run long, so Mika and I will try and be brief in our portion of the report. Then we're going to turn the floor over to Kate and Mia, who will present the presentation regarding the NAS schedule change that went into effect on January the 19th. So the senior classes brunch bag event that we told you about at the last meeting went incredibly well. We want to give a huge thank you to Cracked, Good Day Cafe, and Heavenly Donuts for their generous donations, as well as many of the community members who gave cash donations, food donations, water donations. As class officers, we really appreciate everyone who supports our senior class by giving us that creative freedom to execute our own vision for the class. Mika?
Yes, and all the support we've been getting, we really appreciate. We do appreciate it so much. And the support we get will help create really special senior events that we have planned that were also outlined in a letter sent to senior parents in December.
So as another refresher, the meeting before the break, we told you about Interact Club fundraiser, which is meant to plant trees around town to offset paper use at NAS. As of yesterday, they had sold 151 trees at $5 each, which puts them within 100 trees of their goal. So go out and buy some more if you guys want. There's plenty of time to still do that. In addition to that, the junior class at the high school is holding a raffle fundraiser. So you have like a calendar with different dates on it. There are all sorts of businesses from around town that have donated gift cards and other sorts of prizes to this raffle. And then you can pay for a one-time entry ticket or an unlimited entry ticket. And all of this money will go to will go towards the senior events for the junior class next year. Mika.
Yes, additionally, the NAS Black Student Union has been selling shirts for $15 during Black History Month and have also been raising awareness of prominent Black Americans by highlighting their achievements and their historical importance via morning announcements at the high school. Additionally, Mr. North Andover signups do run through this weekend, and this year the annual show will be held virtually. And finally, we just want to give the floor over to both our friends and fellow senior leaders, Kate Levitt and Mia Muse, They're going to be presenting the findings of the recent survey that was given out to the students at the high school, as mentioned by Eamon earlier.
Please proceed.
Do we need to present the survey, or will that be presented for us?
Dr. Mealy, can you present the survey? Do you have that?
Or the slideshow, rather?
The slideshow?
Let me see.
If you don't have it, I do have it.
I think they sent it last night. I'm not sure if you were on there.
I don't think I was.
You might want to present
I
that,
got
Mrs.
it.
Ricard. I don't know if Dr. Mealy has a copy.
Yep, I got it.
We have a printed copy here, but we didn't.
Right.
All right. Can you see it?
Yes.
Right, and I don't know how to do all the magic stuff to make it look better. Is that good enough?
Yeah.
We can
if
see
you
it.
click present, it'll just come in full screen, but that's fine.
Okay.
Click what?
So I'm Kate Lovett. I'm a senior at NAS, and I'm student council president. So at the end of January, student council and student ambassadors worked together to create a survey regarding the new schedule. And it was given to students at the start of February. And then we analyzed the results over February break and presented them to Mr. Jackson yesterday. And Mr. Jackson presented them to the rest of the staff and faculty. I just want to preface by saying originally we kind of assumed that the results would show that we would be advocating for a change to the schedule and revert back to something similar that we did first trimester. But after seeing the results, we realized that the constant changes to the structure of day-to-day schooling due to COVID has caused significant strain on students' mental health. And we decided that instead of creating more change and uncertainty, we should put our efforts into finding realistic solutions to help the student body that can be implemented into our current schedule. And we felt that the results of the survey echoed that sentiment. You can go to the next slide. So we had 854 responses, which is the majority of the student body, and it was pretty evenly split among grades. You can go to the next slide. So in regards to if teachers were already having asynchronous meets, Google Meets on asynchronous days, so when students were at home, if teachers were live streaming in any capacity, about 77% of students weren't doing those meets. A lot of AP classes did meet regularly. A lot of AP classes did meet every day in order to cover all the required material, although it wasn't just AP classes that were meeting every day before the schedule change. Next slide.
Dr. Mealy, have you taken over presenting? Should I stop presenting?
I have it now, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So what students liked about the new schedule was the majority of students liked the shorter passing times in between classes. So instead of 10 minutes in between classes, we now have 5. And longer classes was another popular response. 17% of students did write none or they didn't like it, and another 17% of students chose other and did not write an additional response. You can go to the next slide. In regards to what changes people didn't like about the schedule, the majority of students didn't like the shorter passing time, longer classes, and especially the asynchronous online meets. It's important to note that there is some overlap in between what students did and didn't like, but 238 students liked shorter passing times while 483 disliked it. and only 130 students liked longer classes, while 517 disliked it, and then 192 students liked the asynchronous meets, while 539 dislike them. It's also important to note that in some of the open-ended questions that were included in the survey, students voiced that they felt the 20 minutes was either those 20 minutes online meets that we do on asynchronous days were either a waste of time or were adding too much to their workloads. And our goal and the goal of the administration and the teachers is to find a way to make sure that this time is used effectively and not wasting students' time or overwhelming students. It would be nice not to have to do these meets, but it's what's needed in order to meet state requirements at the moment.
Hello, I'm Mia. I'm one of the 7 student ambassadors leaders. And so for this slide, we're talking about how the schedule has affected overall stress. And as you can see, a significant percentage of the students who took this survey believe that their stress has increased. And with this being said, it just further proves that we need to figure out some way to incorporate improving our students' well-being and mental health with this new schedule, because familiarity and routine will be good for the students as well. Next slide. So next up, these are the best words to describe your feelings and reactions to this new schedule. And so as the data kind of shows, despite providing a various selection of words, whether they be positive, negative, or in between those, most of the words chosen were negative, those being overwhelmed, frustrated, and burnt out. But with that being said, the most frequently chosen positive adjectives were productive, connected, and organized. And these results make sense given that this new schedule allows for this increased amount in face-to-face contact between teachers and students. However, this positive feedback cannot overshadow the negative feedback that we've received in this survey. So any positive feedback received doesn't neglect this evidence of mental, social, and emotional distress the students have indicated in this survey. And there may not be much room regarding the adjustment of the schedule. However, we believe that in order to help the students feel less overwhelmed and burnt out, teachers must spend more time checking in with these students. And we believe that through these 20-minute periods, that's the best way to do so. And they should also give students more time to complete assignments and be more lenient with due dates, if possible, obviously. And although these are small but important actions that the teachers must take in order to improve the connection between the students and teachers and the well-being of the students overall. And next slide. So for our summary of this entire survey, we have realized that there has been an overwhelming decline of students' mental health during this pandemic and during this new schedule. So the lack of socialization and the converting the asynchronous into 20 minutes have contributed to this decline in mental health. However, we also believe that this routine is very important for students to build our mental health back up. So that's why we would like to find ways to utilize the schedule and create a plan to better the students' mental health with the schedule. And next slide.
I don't know if there is a next slide. Oh,
Dr. Mealy, I'm getting a report that the slides are blurry online, so I just want to interrupt for a second. I don't know, NACAM, if you can do anything to help us out to clarify the slides online.
They're very clear in here, so.
They're clear from me looking here as well.
I assume we'll post them online as well, correct?
They're linked
Okay.
to the agenda.
Oh, are they linked? Okay,
Yep.
perfect.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so for our solutions that we've learned kind of from this entire survey, we've decided that our new goal is to find ways to improve students' well-being and mental health in this new schedule. And a couple methods to completing this goal is we want to turn this 20 minutes into more of a social activity, kind of where group work is encouraged and students can kind of connect between the teachers and other students. We also believe that just an example of this would be choosing their own breakout rooms. And another thing that we've kind of seen through the high school students' opinions is that they'd want snow days to be more of a mental health day rather than having remote class, but that's something that would need to be further discussed. And so our biggest solution with this new schedule and building up student mental health is to develop a strategic approach for the teachers to use when we conduct these 20-minute time blocks. And in the survey, we gathered student recommendations. For example, do nows, mental health check-ins, group work, review, and most importantly, we've learned that students do not want new material during these 20 minutes just for the sake of the best learning environment they can achieve. And so overall, based off this survey, we, the student leadership groups, want to focus on the mental health of our student population and utilize the schedule to create a productive learning environment that will produce less stress. And we believe that these 20-minute periods give us the best opportunity to reconnect students with learning. And therefore, with this survey in mind, we are going to use the solutions that we just discussed in an attempt to better the students' mental health and learning in all our schools. And that's all we have.
Thank you ever so much. That was really comprehensive, and I would give the opportunity to my colleagues to ask any questions or make any comments that they would like. And I'll start with Ms. Lynch.
That was really well done. I'm very impressed. Thank you for that information. Was it your sense that the positive responses were genuine? I'm just trying to reconcile the answers being the same. I understand more students answered in the negative. What was your sense on are they feeling positive to be back in school? Or just frustrated because they want to be more? What do you attribute that to?
I think that everyone who answered the survey answered very genuinely, and I think students are just more looking for kind of a routine, and it's kind of a mixed bag. Some students are happy to be in school. Some students, it works for them. What a lot of people liked, or not a lot of people, but there were a handful of people who liked that it created more of a routine during their school days, during their asynchronous days, while some people liked having independence. So it's different for everyone, but the majority of it was negative.
Thank you. Thanks for doing that.
And Mr. Teresi.
No questions, but thank you, Kathleen and Mia. Nice job, nice presentation. Thank you.
Mr. McDevitt.
Just a couple of quick points, and I'm not sure that you can necessarily tell this right now, but when you talked about the students who were overwhelmed and frustrated and feeling a little bit more burnt out, was that when they were remote? Was there a bigger impact when they were having to connect in to those classes, and that kind of added to that, or was it more with being in person and having students connect in, or is it just really kind of everything?
So we kind of believe that routine played a significant effect in that, and with the new schedule, kids had to get used to this whole way of learning, and also a lot of teachers had to find strategies within these 20 minutes. So we think that just everyone had to kind of get more used to the schedule, and that kind of created a more negative theme in the survey.
Okay. And then go ahead. Sorry.
Just to add to what Mia said, a lot of students felt that with those 20 minutes, they were being assigned more work because they would have to do a whole lesson and then get homework from that on top of the asynchronous work they already had to do, and then it would also take away the time they had to do that asynchronous work, because now they have 20 minutes less because they're sitting on that 20-minute meet. So that was why one of our suggestions was no new material or lessons during that 20 minutes, just so students aren't getting more information on top of the homework and stuff they already have to do.
Thank you, Kate. I think that was a really good clarification, and I know both of my sons kind of echo that as well with how that is. The other point I'm just going to make is, I think you guys did a great job and a fantastic job, and whatever the number is, 60-65% of the student population responded. So, I think it's really fantastic to hear this. Some of these numbers, are certainly not what we want to hear about our students, but it's important that we hear them and that we make changes and modifications to do that. And I think the best piece about this is you guys could have come and kind of just presented what was here, but I think it was maybe your last 1 and 2 slides said, here are suggestions that we can do in order to make changes and to make that 20 minutes a little bit more meaningful and a little bit more valuable for all of our classmates in the mental health. And I know Mr. Jackson is here as well, so I hope that he and his leadership team really hear that and can start to put that into play. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mabley.
So Mr. McDevitt, in his last 3 minutes of speaking, said what I was going to say. So I will endorse that. I really appreciated the final 2 slides in particular. You gave ideas for solutions, and the idea that working in partnership with your teachers and your other student colleagues to help make the experience improve and work with what you're being dealt at this moment is really well done by you all. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mabley. I have a general question that wasn't necessarily in your survey, but I wonder, are you finding that the students are joining these meets with face into the meet, or is it just an initial on the screen? And I wonder, as a student, how you're interacting with the folks that are remote, and are you seeing just an initial, or are you seeing a face?
It depends on the class. Usually I have some AP classes that everyone always has their cameras on and we're logged in for the whole time. I think one of the solutions to that, though, and to make those 20 minutes a little more social, is to encourage breakout rooms instead of just kind of sitting and like watching the teacher give a lesson or a lecture. And then another important piece of that to breakout rooms is being able to choose your breakout room to and like be with your friends, because when you're in school, most of the time you get to choose who you sit with, you get to choose who you collaborate with, and sometimes it's a little awkward if you're in a breakout room, everyone has their cameras off and no one's talking and no one knows each other. So most of us have been going to school together for a long time, so we have like friends and stuff we'd like to collaborate with, and I know my experience is definitely better when I get to be in breakout rooms and work with my friends. And I know that's what a lot of people are missing from school.
Thank you. I find that very helpful. I wonder if you have any intention of a follow-up survey to see, if things improve, or if you're going to be having your ear to the ground, or what you think your next steps might be.
Well, our first step was probably with that solutions slide. We really want to kind of build a list to share with the students and the teachers and how we can make those 20 minutes work. And then after we kind of use those survey results to kind of create a plan and go out with those solutions, then in a couple weeks, we can definitely look into sending out another survey.
I mean, it may not be helpful, but it might be helpful, maybe in a month or two. But I'm just interested, and like the others, I'm very impressed with the way you took the data, and most impressed that you said we came in with a hypothesis that we were going to be advocating for one thing, for some sort of change, but instead of a change in the schedule, we really want to improve what's in front of us so that we're not having additional change. I think that was really, to go from one hypothesis to a different action step. I think that shows tremendous, intellect and maturity. And the one thing that really struck me as you were reading it is that people found that the meetings were either induced stress or they were bored, and that just seems like the two opposite ends, or maybe boredom's a psych response to stress, right? I'm checked out. I'm going to be bored rather than taking this in as stressful. So I thank you all very much for coming. I thank you for providing that information, and I'm sure Mr. Jackson is going to take that back, and I'm sure the teachers are going to be appreciative of that feedback. Okay. So you all are welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, and you are welcome to go. We know you have other things to do, and you are not trapped here. We will not be offended if you scoot out of the meet.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
I've mislaid my glasses. I don't know how that is while I'm sitting here. Oh, I found them. Okay, so our next order of business is the superintendent's report, which will also be lengthy, and I'm turning it over to Dr. Gilligan.
Ms. Picard, thank you so much, and great job by the students. Terrific perspective and insight. Tonight's superintendent's report will include information from our school physician, Dr. Chan, who recently met with our public schools to discuss a return to school and mental health, and he'll be providing his thoughts tonight. We also have Mr. Jackson here to provide updates on graduation and a potential new schedule update for North Andover High School and what that timeline is in the process. Assistant Superintendent Lorene Marks will be speaking on the upcoming MCAS. We'll have Dr. Mealy tonight talking about return to school focus groups, and we'll talk about a survey under the new business as part of our plan to increase in-person learning this spring, along with the presentation from Ms. Marks, where Ms. Barzak will be participating as well. Before I introduce Dr. Chan, I want people to know that as a parent, administrator, your neighbor, I know the challenges that families and students and staff have faced during this pandemic. And we all want our students in class. We know there's no substitution for in-person learning, and we want to keep our students, staff safe and provide the best education possible. I also want folks to know that we have been working really hard in planning to increase in-person learning time. We've had really tremendous mitigation strategies this year that have allowed us to operate in a hybrid model and, for the most part, stay in school. About 6 weeks ago, we did have, right after the new year, we did have to close down for a week. But the mitigation strategies have been really tremendous. And the numbers of cases, we've seen a decline more recently. Yesterday afternoon, Commissioner O'Reilly met with superintendents about 3 o'clock yesterday for the first time, talking about his priority to bring back elementary students in April. And he's looking to get the authority to mandate that students resume full-time in person in grades K through 5. Although he brought this to us yesterday, this contingent is, this directive by the commissioner would be contingent on the Department of Education's board approval, which he anticipates he would get sometime in March. Tonight we had planned on, and we will show you, the work we've been doing and present to the school committee this evening, our plan to bring back grades 1 and 2 in mid-March. And we are looking to provide additional time for them, as well as bring back all elementary students later in April. But given the commissioner's announcement and talking with superintendents at 3 o'clock yesterday, we'll be presenting tonight revised timelines to move forward for our students here in North Andover. So I want you to know that during the next few weeks, we're going to continue to work as an administrative team. And I don't want to give away the whole presentation. I can do that sometimes. We'll talk about the survey, the challenges we face, because the priority is to bring back our elementary kids to in-person learning. There's no substitute for it. Although the commissioner is putting an emphasis on elementary and has no specific timeline or thoughts just yet on secondary, 6 through 12, that's something he anticipates doing in the future. It's also something that we'll continue to look at. So we have been planning, we have work to do, and we realize the challenges that folks have faced, and we want what's best for our kids here in North Andover is to educate them and keep them and our staff safe, but also provide the best education possible and look to increase in-person learning opportunities, which we will talk about in a presentation later, and also provide a timeline of what that looks like. That being said, I would like to introduce our school physician, Dr. Chan, who just recently met with North Andover Public Schools and Andover Public Schools in a joint meeting.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi.
Yes, I'm the North Andover school physician. We had a nice, productive meeting yesterday with the Andover representatives from the Andover and the North Andover Public Schools. This was initiated by some.
We lost you. We've lost your audio.
Yep. He's not muted, but
How
his
about
audio
now?
got lost.
How's that now?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Yeah, so since the fall school openings, we've noticed, as all of you have as well, a tremendous amount of stress taken on by the kids that we see in our office. So we've noticed, parents calling us with concerns over their mental health, kids having more issues with depression and anxiety, referrals made for therapists, and an increase in prescriptions for anti-anxiety and antidepressant medications. Other things we've been noticing too are some issues with eating, with the lack of structure at home. We're finding that quite a few kids are gaining a bit too much weight as well. Back when we started the school year, I feel that the schools, Andover and North Andover particularly, have done a good job. Back then in September, the beginning of the school year, not much was known at that time. So all of the measures that have been taken to develop your current system, I feel was appropriate. Since then, though, I think this is a perfect time to talk further about what we can do to make things better for them now that we see some negative effects, but we also have seen some really good things that have been done in the schools. The main thing being everyone should be congratulated about the safe environment that they provided for everyone in the schools, children and adults alike. There's plenty of data to show now that in-school transmission of COVID-19 is low compared to rates of kids getting it outside of the school. So student-to-student transmission, student-to-teacher, and teacher-to-student transmission has been low. And now we're seeing obviously some vaccination efforts are starting to become successful. Hopefully we can get our teachers vaccinated soon as well. And we're seeing lowering rates of transmission. And now we have the data to show that our current efforts have kept in-school transmission to be low. So it seems like a great time to talk about what more can we do. And we're seeing this in our communities, and it's great to see this discourse now. This is typically the way it works, right? In other words, you get some information, then there's public discourse, and then hopefully with policy, it sounds like we need this more at the state level so it won't bind us, so we can move forward for getting our kids back into school.
So, Dr. Gilligan, are you anticipating that this is an opportunity for our school committee members to ask any questions of Dr. Chan, or do you want to continue your presentation and we'll hold our questions? How do you want this to go?
Absolutely an opportunity to ask any questions that you may have of Dr. Chan, and we'll ask Dr. Chan to stay around for our presentation in case anything else comes up.
Okay, so I'll start with Ms. Lynch.
Yes, thank you. Do you believe it's safe at 3 feet, fully masked, and all that for the kids to come back?
So the major things that have been suggested are mask wearing, social distancing, washing hands. It seems like out of all those mitigation efforts, the separation is probably the least impactful of the three. There is some data showing that there are still low rates under 6 feet. So while it seems like it's safe, we need more backup. In other words, from the state of Massachusetts, in order to say, hey, this is something that we can safely do, and I think we can.
Thank you.
Mr. Teresi?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understood that last answer, but but I will say, when your letter came out with your colleagues a few weeks ago, the parent in me loved it because I've been a big proponent of getting the kids back in school as much as possible. So I was very happy to see it. I will say, as a policymaker, this is a challenge, and I know you're not going to give us a definitive answer. And similar to what Holly just asked, the 3 feet versus 6 feet, I think these are numbers that the public is just so focused on what is quote unquote safe, and I think they're looking to experts like yourself to give us the answer, and I don't think there is the answer. I think it's something that. I think more people are comfortable with than others, but when you give your advice as a physician, people want to know what your opinion is. I don't think whatever you give is not a fact that it's definitely safe. I don't think anyone would expect that, but if we can go back and people are masked and they're doing as much social distancing as possible, I think that's the dilemma. That's the $100,000 question that we're being asked to weigh in on. Can our kids come back full time? And if to do that, we have to be at 3 feet. So would you want to answer that question? I don't want
to. Otherwise, I'm going to ask it next.
And I was fully anticipating that would be asked. So if you're asking my opinion is yes. I think 3 feet is safe. Yet I also understand the reality of, in other words, we need to have the top experts also commenting as well with these. But certainly from the data that we've seen, and also seeing what's been happening in schools right now, we've been seeing it's the low rates. So if you're asking for is 3 feet safe, I would say we should I would hope that DESE would make changes that would allow for that.
I would hope so too, but I would say honestly, your opinion matters more to me than DESE's does.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chan.
So I'll go quickly. I think the question, 3 feet is probably number one on everybody's mind, whether they're here or watching at home. You've certainly mentioned masks and trying to be distance and hand washing. Are there other precautions that you would recommend as we go back to school or look to go back to school that you think should be incorporated in? We've done air quality tests in the school. We've done filtration. Is there something else that before you sent your children back to school that you would ask?
I would say that I'm not an expert with ventilation or with those kinds of things, but I think if you look more kind of not so much at ventilation types and how they're related to spread, I would just more take a look at how is the spread in schools right now. I think that's probably the best way to look at it.
Okay. And a quick follow-up, do your children go to school?
Yes.
Okay.
I have 2 high schoolers.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I have several questions. Some have kind of already been asked, but in your opinion is helpful. Thank you very much. For people, though, who are looking for, I mean, we can go and find any documentation, article, research to support any point of view that any of us have. It's what people have been doing, right? So are there resources, you don't have to give them to us now, but it might be helpful if we had resources of articles or research or things that you could point to that are supporting why you feel that the 3 feet will be okay, because I think people who are nervous about that are looking for comfort. And if we remember being in this room back in September when we made our decision to do hybrid, people were super afraid to go at 6 feet. And we did it, and it's panned out pretty well for people who did it, right? So I think we have another hurdle of nervousness, and we're needing to find ways to make people feel more comfortable. And I know the CDC just came out with some new stuff at the beginning of February. I can't actually find answers to basic stuff like 3 foot, 6 foot there. Have they weighed in on this issue? Do you know?
So I'd have to take a closer look at some of the studies done. I think the American Academy of Pediatrics has put out some studies, I think with the most well-known one being in Wisconsin. I'd have to take a closer look at those numbers with regards to if it was 6 feet or 3 feet. I don't want to make a comment unless I know for sure.
Right.
But I think there is data out there. But I would say most schools are, because CDC has said 6 feet. You might have some school systems out there who didn't do that. And I'm happy to be a resource and look that up for you guys and give you my comment on that.
I just think it would help people
Yes,
in
absolutely.
general. And then related to your saying, you'd feel comfortable trying 3 feet. Do you feel that way K-12, pre-K to 12, or do you see a breakdown? A lot of the research that you see online, it says younger kids, low transmission. As they get older, doesn't feel so good. And so I'm wondering if you have a spot at which your anxiety your comfort level changes, or if you think K to 12 is good.
I think K to 12 would be fine to
Okay.
do 3 feet if we can have more people saying that that's the case. I'd be very happy to hear that.
Right. Okay. And then a tangential question to that is, well, what about 3 feet and then eating food with no mask?
That is an interesting dilemma because, as you know, without masks, you have open air and people close to each other. My sense is that it would probably be safe, but again, I don't know enough about that to comment as well.
Okay. And then,
That would be a challenge,
sorry.
sure.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. Say that again.
That would be a challenge
Okay.
to figure it out, at least, how you're going to set up things in school. Sure.
Okay. And then lastly, around this, I think Cheryl might be talking about this, but have there been any changes to the contact tracing protocols, or is that still going to be a 6 foot radius situation? The way that hasn't changed those protocols, right?
I don't believe that's changed yet.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Mabley. I was in the meeting that we had yesterday, Dr. Chan, and one of the things that really struck me when you were discussing was what we're really talking about is weighing the real damage that you're seeing children experience, younger children primarily showing stress with behavioral acting out, denial, refusing, crying, withdrawing, older kids, perhaps self-harm, versus the potential risk of exposure to COVID. Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen in your practice with kids that get COVID?
Yeah, so I can say in our practice, we probably had over 300 cases of COVID. The majority, I can name only one who ended up in an ICU, and that child had some other medical reasons to be in the ICU. The vast majority had minimal to no symptoms. That tended to be the younger children. And the teenagers tended to have more symptoms. As far as any long-term effects on them specifically, the only thing that's been rather interesting for us is that the loss of smell and loss of taste in some has lingered for months. Other unknown issue that we're being asked to assess that for athletes going into sports after having COVID, are they at any risk? Because we know that there are some effects on the heart. That's somewhat of an unknown right now. The main reason why we're trying to get these kids seen is to really prevent spread. They tend to be less symptomatic. They tend to be less infectious. But if they were to infect adults, then that would be more serious.
So I know you're a pediatrician, so you wouldn't necessarily follow, but you might be informed from your patients if, of those 300, their parents and older siblings and grandparents and everybody was getting sick from those children and that contact tracing. Is that information that you have at all?
That is information that we have, I would say, have anecdotally, yes. So I have lots of conversations. The predominant scenario is we get a call from a parent who says their child's been exposed. So we assess the risk. If it's likely that that they might have it. Oftentimes, we're not even seeing them in the office. We are seeing them outdoors and testing them outdoors. If it is a little bit less likely or they don't have symptoms, then we will still see them. We do testing. We send our results to the Department of Public Health with those results.
So are you finding that the children that you see who have it are passing it on to the adults in their life?
So we are seeing some, but it seems to me that there is more parent-to-child transmission than the other way around.
Okay, that makes sense. And then talking about one of the mitigating things is cohorts. So a classroom is a cohort in an elementary school. At the high school, of course, there's no cohorts. So kids are, whatever, with 100 or 150 kids a day. What are your feelings around that? What are your thoughts around that?
So I think we're dealing with moving targets here. We have lots of really encouraging information about vaccinations and with people, rates of COVID infection going down. And we're finding that schools are not so much of an issue, at least with our current situation of transmission. When you're putting them if we're considering a model where you're putting them closer together into cohorts, the big question is, well, when you have somebody who does come down with COVID, you're going to end up having to quarantine a larger amount of people. So, how that all fits in this big equation, it's a little bit hard to assess because, while things are getting better in one, this may be potentially a problem. So you could argue it either way. You could say, yes, this could be a problem. If we had, another surge like we did, back in November, December, this would not work. But with vaccinations, with the low rates that we know are pretty, things are going well with that. I would think that, that's something that we should at least try to see how it goes.
Yeah, I'm not sure how vaccinations play into high school students because I don't think that they're eligible for vaccinations.
Yeah, so
most of the people on the call are not yet.
I'm referring mostly to teachers at this point.
I see. Okay. All right. Thank you. That's helpful. And I would just say, Ms. Mably, you were asking about CDC. when I looked at the CDC guidelines just a couple of days ago, and I know things, today feels like a dramatically different world than it was Monday before DESE made some changes. The guidance to teachers in setting up classrooms was put your desks 6 feet apart and have them all facing forward. So it seems that the CDC guidance is still 6 foot distancing, and the American Academy of Pediatrics and DESE seem to be giving us the 3 foot, and the WHO is giving us the 1 meter. So it's challenging, as Ms. Mabley said, follow the science. Well, which science do you want to follow? It's challenging. So thank you, and I appreciate you sticking around. And I will go back to Dr. Gilligan. You can lead us forward.
Certainly, before we move on to the next part, I think it's really important just to mention, what DESE is. They're really looking, Dr. Chan, for that phased approach, with elementary being the first priority. They realize that there are different local boards with recommendations, Mass DPH, we meet with weekly with different recommendations, CDC with different recommendations, WHO, and obviously you as our school physician. But they're looking to take this phased approach, and that's what we'll be talking about tonight with the youngest kids coming in. So let's see here, if I go back to the superintendent's report. Next up, and Dr. Chan, if you could stick around for our presentation and our timeline, it would be terrific.
Dr. Gilligan, did you have anything from Brian LaGrasse? I know he has another meeting tonight, but did he give you anything to bring to us?
So we meet weekly with Brian, and he'll be available next week. He has had recommendations at 6 feet. That said, I think Dr. Chan pointed out a few things about the American Academy of Pediatrics. The DESE talking about a phased approach, particularly starting with elementary, and some of these other components. So we will have him back next week. Cheryl can speak a little bit more, but we meet with COVID task force once a week, and then we also meet with our health department counterparts every week as well. So he'll be in, and we'll continue to vet. How do we get more in person? How do we do it safely? We want to bring our kids back, and we'll see that in that presentation next. Not next, because we have a few more updates. So I would like to invite high school principal Chet Jackson to talk about graduation plans and a potential high school schedule change.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Brief update on the graduation. It's been on our school calendar for Friday, June 4th. We will be planning an outdoor graduation, and we'll be keeping an eye on the guidelines to see how we can set that up and have guests depending on what the limits are based on the guidelines. So just a brief one on that. And I can move on to the schedule too. I think that's all you kind of wanted to update here. There, got Dr. Gilligan correct?
Yeah, just I think a big one was on the graduation. I know when I go places, folks have asked, are we going to have a graduation this year? Is it going to be outdoors? Are we going to be able to do a live in person? And that's exciting to hear, Mr. Jackson, that that's what we're planning for.
Yeah. And I did have a slide together. I don't know if Dr. Mealy has it on the timeline for the new high school schedule.
Yep, just give me a second.
No problem. We're not done yet. Thanks. Mr. Nugent, our guidance director, and I were here last meeting, and we talked a little bit about the schedule. We wanted to come back with a timeline for everyone to show, we've been working on this for a couple of years, even longer in thought, and have kind of gone through some back and forth with the Teachers Association, our high school staff, on some schedules. We've had a couple of very productive meetings. There's a lot of mutual gain in what we have proposed. We're at a spot in our timeline here, and as we start March and transition to March, where we're going to bring in a subgroup, hopefully of 2 people from our school committee, next week to start negotiations on proposed contract language. And then I think as we kind of move down there, what's important, we don't want people to forget is we are going to go back for feedback and for clarifying questions to our parents of high school parents, to our students via our mechanisms through advisory or student council as well. And as we narrow down that process, bring back to the school committee if that's the need for a final vote as well. But we do want to share some details through, but it's important for us to get that negotiating step and get that agreement before going back and then taking it to the various stakeholders. To have that all done by April 1st.
Is it time for any questions from the committee? Ms. Lynch?
I don't have any questions, thanks.
Mr. Teresi?
No, thank you, Mr. Jackson.
You're welcome.
Mr. McDevitt?
None right now.
Ms. Mably?
All set, thank you.
Okay, that's the jackpot. You get 5-0. You don't have any questions right now. Thank you, that's really helpful to us. That's an aggressive timeline, and it's tremendous to me that we're able to be working on this kind of work while we're simultaneously working on the COVID pandemic crisis that we've been managing all year. So this is really exciting about the high school. Thank you very much. Dr. Gilligan.
Yes, so I would like to ask Assistant Superintendent Ms. Marks to talk about MCAS and an MCAS update.
All right. Good evening. Just a quick update on MCAS. DESE has been preparing for MCAS administration with a qualifier that they needed to watch the virus trajectory and the federal government mandates. Earlier this week, the federal government did say that testing must occur. So our tests in grades 3 through 8 will be shorter, won't take as much time away from classroom instruction. And the tests will be used for collecting data on student performance to help inform instruction, to give us and the state a better idea of where our students are. They will not be used for accountability this year. There's also some discussion, as we know, we have students who are in our remote program, our OLAP program. So there is some discussion on allowing grades 3 through 8 to take the MCAS remotely if they're in the OLAP program. I don't believe that that is going to be an option for grade 10. No final decision has been made on that yet, but those conversations have been broached. So just a quick review of testing dates. Grades 3 through 8, ELA will be sometime between April 5th and May 7th. Math will be between April 26th and May 28th. And science and technology for grades 5 and 8 will be between April 27th and May 28th. The high school ELA and math tests will be between May 10th and May 27th. Again, like last year, there will be a modified competency determination for the class of 2021. For those students who have not yet earned that competency determination in ELA or math, they can demonstrate that through the successful completion of a relevant class with the appropriate curriculum frameworks in math or ELA to demonstrate that competency. And the high school worked on that last year, and that is an option again this year. So that is a quick update on MCAS.
Are there any questions from the committee, starting with Ms. Lynch?
No, thank you.
Mr. Teresi?
Just one quick question, Ms. Marks, when do those dates become more, I mean, there's a big wide range there. When do they become more definitive?
The high school principal and the elementary and middle school principals will be setting those dates soon, and that information will go out to parents, just as it has in past years. So that will remain the same.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. McDevitt?
Yeah, it's an interesting coincidence that those dates coincide with their push to have students returning back to school. But my question is, I know that a number of school committees members, there's a listserv, and we've contacted representatives that were not necessarily in favor of this. What if we don't take it? What if we don't do it?
I don't know. I know that parents have an option to opt out. I don't know that school districts have an option to opt out.
So how many parents need to opt out in order for, I mean, I'm just curious. I mean,
Yeah, no, interesting.
I could probably count 500 parents in a second who would say, I don't care about MCAS, and personally, I don't either.
Yeah, Mr. McDevitt. So I think one of the things over the years is, under the federal education law, it requires each state to do this. The commissioner hasn't indicated anything about necessarily relief other than some different types of testing. Ms. Marks, I believe there's not an official opt-out because that's not allowed. And it's over the years it's counted against districts. But over the years, the state has had kids who just didn't take the test, and they knew that. So districts knew that there were kids that were not going to take the test. So, the impact is something, Mr. McDevitt, we could ask, certainly DESE, to get more information about what are the specific ramifications for our district in terms of, is there a threshold percentage that we have to complete, et cetera.
Okay, that'd be interesting to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms.
They haven't
Mabley?
provided any information on that at this point.
Thank you. Ms. Mabley?
Yes, so we've gotten some letters, at least I have, I'm sure all of us have, that's come through an organization. You can tell it's a letter that's been the same from various people saying, please don't have the test. But one thing it does talk about is the weeks lost teaching to the test. And as far as I can recall, you haven't taught to the MCAS test, taught to prepare for the MCAS test, change your curriculum to teach for that test in years. Is that correct?
That's correct. We teach to the standards, and the standards are what are tested. So
Right.
we don't take out practice tests and do all of that kind of thing. We don't teach to the test.
Right. And then the only other comment I guess to make, so this test would be totally different from any MCASs in the past. And so while it might give us a little bit of anecdotal data about how kids are doing or not doing, you certainly can't compare it year to year. It's really invaluable or not valuable in and of itself, other than kid by kid to see if you can find out a little bit of something about each kid. It's not going to help you see how education or curricula or anything has improved kids' learning. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's really going to, be used to look at students and what we need to do within our schools with our students. And again, it's not going to be used as an accountability measure this year.
Thanks.
So I wonder, Ms. Marks, if you feel like you are going to get any useful data as far as anticipating what our needs will be in recovery or any of those sorts of things, because I know, we've been waiting for mid-year data from MAPS to help us understand what the budget is going to be around recovery. So I wonder if you anticipate it's going to provide some useful information in that way.
It could. The test may not, it's not going to be given. We don't typically get the results until the fall. So hopefully we'll be looking at recovery services. I think any data is useful, but we too are collecting our own data within the district to help look at where our students are and what those recovery services are.
All right, and I know that's going to be on a future agenda. I wonder, as far as if a district were to refuse to do it, and I'm not advocating for that, but I'm just asking the question, do we know if our compliance in having students take it is tied in any way to state or federal funds that would come to North Andover?
I could let Ms. Marks answer. I do know, I can't specifically speak to this year. And as we know, the traditional MCAS basically ended in about 2016 when they went to Park, and then MCAS 2.0 and made significant changes. So the MCAS has really continues to change. There's still the question about the kids who are in OLA or remote academies in districts, like how are they going to take the test? Would they have to come in? And more importantly, last but not least, in years past, there are a few districts that I had seen, and by name I don't recall, there were I think two, that were talking about not taking the test, and that was going to impact their funding from the government.
Okay, thank you very much. Next topic, Dr. Gilligan.
Yep, so next we have Dr. Mealy. Dr. Mealy, focus groups and survey, and the survey part you may want to wait till the presentation.
So we're fortunate here in North Andover, as I think everybody in this room knows, to have some excellent people in our community who are willing to volunteer their time to help the school department provide for our students. And one such group is a group of parents who, in the summertime, volunteered to facilitate the parent focus groups that we had to get an understanding of what parents had liked and not liked from the spring and wanted to see in the fall. And they did just an unbelievable job, and the reports they generated were tremendous and a big help. That group has reformed to solicit feedback again and figure out how the best way to do it. We met the other night, and the two main efforts right now, one was in them identifying the questions that we need to address as an administration and a school committee in tonight's discussions. So they helped us understand what the big questions are out in the community. And the second part is just a sense of the surveys, and I'll talk a little bit more about it, but the biggest challenge with the surveys is trying to develop a survey that is useful without trying to get too much information. You know, everyone wants to be included and be heard, but you don't want to make it so complicated and try and do all in one. So their recommendation was certainly to parse it out based on whatever initiative we are doing at the time. And so you'll see in our timeline that the first survey that will be going out will be geared towards the elementary parents. And we certainly want to give middle school and high school parents the opportunity, but we'll do that in a separate survey following not too long after that, so that we hear from them as well. But it just explains, based on their recommendations, they thought that would be the most effective. But that group, what we'll do too is after the surveys come in, get back together and decide if some focus groups following that would be useful, or what else might be useful in gathering input and also communicating with the community.
Great, and that would end the superintendent's report at this time, and I would turn it back over to Madam Chair for I think Chair's report is next.
That is correct. Thank you very much. Thank you all for that information. There is a tremendous amount going on in our schools and in our district. So the chair's report, we start with a welcome of new student reps, and I will turn to Mr. McDevitt to fill us in.
Sure. I'll be relatively brief in the interest of time. You know, as you guys know, we typically have 2 students, seniors or juniors who kind of serve with us for 2 years so that they're able to kind of get used to reporting out the activities of the high school, and we get to kind of know them a little bit through their tenure. And so Mika and Naaman have definitely done a fantastic job, but you know, we start to look to the junior class now. So an announcement was made at the high school. Some students met with Mr. Jackson in order to express their interest. Mrs. Picard and I met with them, I think maybe a week or so before break. Just to kind of get to know them a little bit. And then they have subsequently met with Mika and Amond. And so I think next week I think our meeting's the 4th, we'll probably have our 2 new reps joining us as well. And it's Lindsay Trong and Ethan Wadaka, who are part of the class of 2022. And we look forward to seeing them next week.
Thank you, Mr. McDevitt. And if I know that there's a tremendous amount of people. I've just gotten an update that we've got about 250 people watching on the YouTube channel. And then there's a whole bunch of other people that are probably watching on cable TV. So if anybody is watching and going, boy, I'd like to be a student rep someday, if you're interested in that, you talk to Mr. Jackson or Mr. Steve Nugent, and they will help you to understand how that process would work for future years. So next we have this School Capacity Subcommittee, and I would turn it to Ms. Lynch or Dr. Mealy.
Yep, I'll start, and then Jimmy can fill in. So we have been meeting bi-weekly since we started, and we met last night, as a matter of fact, and we're making great progress. We've identified what the committee feels are all possible models for expansion and renovation of the schools, Franklin, Atkinson, Kittredge, NAMS. Our next step is also to get parent input. So last night we started working on a survey, and we're mindful that this survey's going around. So one of the members last night brought up the point that there's going to be a lot of survey fatigue. So that was really helpful for us to know so that we can kind of scale ours back a little bit and maybe do it in stages. But yes, we want to know what the community thinks about the different options, everything from which schools to renovate and how to break up grade distribution, transitions, transportation, start times, lots of issues go into this. So we're looking for a lot of feedback on that. Jim? You can talk about Royal Crest if you want.
Just two things. One, I can't stress enough how important it is to us that we vet our process as much as possible, because I've said this over and over again. The last thing we want to have happen is to get nearer the end of the process and have someone say or ask, have you thought of this? And we hadn't. So we want people to be asking us those questions during the process so we can incorporate it in and consider it and weigh the pros and cons of whatever it might be. And secondly, as far as the survey goes, we're at that stage now where we really need to understand the priorities of the community. So I guess my best example is when we're looking at the school projects and what the end result might be, you have a question that comes up as to, do you want to have neighborhood-based schools, or do you want to have schools that are based on grade, like first, second are together and third through 5 are together? And so we need to know how the community prioritizes that. Do they have a high preference for one over the other? And we've got a few variables that we need to measure and see what how the community values those different variables. And so that's the focus of the survey.
So a couple of questions. Jim, I know you said it before, but can you just say again how many projects we're potentially looking at?
4 projects. We're talking 3 elementary schools and the middle school.
Okay. And the notes and the agendas, those are all posted on the school committee website. If anybody's interested, those are open meetings, so they are posted. And at what point do you anticipate sharing some of those options? I know you guys are pulling up like 5,000 options. At what point do you anticipate that those will be shared with the community?
Yeah, that was a big part of the discussion last night is putting them out there now so that people, one, can kind of weigh in on how they feel about them, and 2, they can offer up others that maybe we hadn't thought of yet to consider as well. The other thing I want to say is we've been sharing the notes and the agendas and the minutes, and leading into the survey, we will be sharing all of the documents that we've gathered. We've been gathering research on subjects such as grade distribution, or best place for 6th grade, whether it's elementary or middle school, things like that. So we've been gathering those resources. We've been putting together models of how people can understand what that model means. Some people can read it and understand it. Some people need the visual. So we're going to try to combine the two in the survey so you can see them both. So all of those, all of that, the resources and the information we have and the models we've created will be shared prior to the survey going out.
Okay, and I'm sorry, did you say a timeline for when you think the survey might go out? I know you're trying
so,
to survey on a survey.
Our next meeting is 2 weeks from now, right? Yep. Mm-hmm. And the goal is to work between now and then, not in a meeting, but kind of offline, with the goal of coming together and finalizing the survey at that next meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Do any other committee members have questions about that process? Hearing none, I'm hoping Ms. Mabley will give us an update on the community chat that we held before the break.
Sure, very, very brief. We had about 6 people and a student join us, and we mostly focused on talking about the budget and around the budget really strategy for educating the community as a whole for the work that we have coming in front of us over the next several years to take care of exactly what Holly and Jim are working on with the committee about how to expand our buildings and get the money we need to populate them with the right staff. And then we also talked a little bit about technology and about getting grades 1 and 2 back into schools. And And so that it was very useful. And then the next one is on April 28th in the morning, I believe.
Yep, thank you very much. I wanted to let the committee know with regards to the performing arts guidance, if there's no objection from the committee, Ms. Mabley drafted a letter that she and I can sign and send to DESE asking for them to review and update their guidance on performing arts guidance. So that's, singing inside and theater and those activities. So if there's no objection to that, Ms. Mabley and I will get a letter out to DESE.
Yep. So before it's sent, I'd just like to see it.
Certainly. Yep. Anybody else? Okay,
I
terrific.
should have a copy right here.
Ms. Picard, I would just say that I've been talking to our music folks, and I'd be happy to send one myself or join in with you guys.
Well, I was going to ask if there's been any update, because I know that, people have been asking for this for a while, and certainly based on what the Jeff Riley's been saying on the news in the last couple of weeks about getting everybody all in, I would certainly hope that this last area of holdout would be, given some revised restrictions. So has anybody, Lorene or Jim or Greg, heard anything?
I can speak to that if you'd like.
Yes.
So on the 11th, the commissioner mentioned that they had provided put forth a proposal, but it was rejected by the medical board regarding singing in schools, and now they're putting together a new proposal, which they hope will be approved soon. He has said repeatedly he's a big advocate of the arts, and he would really like to see something happen. But the proposal that they initially put forth was rejected by the medical board.
Okay. Because honestly, the gist of the letter that I put together just basically says, could you please reevaluate your criteria or your protocols? That's really all it says.
And to be really clear, he did mention in our call yesterday at 3 o'clock, he did bring up singing, and he said it has been rejected and they had to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
That was at 3 o'clock yesterday.
Well, they need to get that taken care of.
Thank you. And then the last thing I want to share on the chair's report was that our CPAC, our Special Education Parent Advisory Council, hosted a very much appreciated SEL presentation on February 9th with Nikki Murphy and Deanna Lima. Nikki is our SEL director in the district, and Deanna is the community support coordinator. And as we continue to talk about social emotional well-being and the toll this pandemic is taking on students and families, I commend those two resources to folks. Deanna is on what I'm going to call the town side of things. She's not a school employee, so she's available to anybody, whether or not they have children in school. And of course, guidance counselors, pediatricians, but Nikki Murphy is our SEL director. And we have a whole SEL resource on the website, if that's helpful. But a lot of times just having a website resource, that you can read electronic documents is not as helpful as having a conversation with somebody. So I commend them to you. And then the last thing, I had a communication this week from a student who was concerned about some of the stuff that adults are posting on social media. And I was reminded of this. Let's see if I can get it in the right place. This came from North Andover Middle School some time ago. And it says, ask before you post. Is it A, appropriate? Is it B, safe, or S, safe? And is it K, kind? So ask before you post. Is it appropriate? Is it safe? Is it kind? And I would just let you all remind us all that what we're saying on social media is impacting our children. And when we're saying things that aren't kind or that aren't safe or that aren't appropriate, it's increasing stress for everybody in the community, including our children. So I just wanted to let you know that I have heard from students about that. And we're on to old business, which there's none, so that's done. And we're on to new business, which is probably why so many of us are here tonight and being watched. So before we do that, just so I don't forget, I really want to thank all the folks on staff who are with us tonight. I know you have long days with kids that start very early in the morning, and this is a long night. It's 9:15, and we're getting started with like the beef of our meeting. So thank you all.
Helen, thank you. And I will be turning over to our team. I think the most important thing, as I said before, we have been planning, we are looking to increase in-person time. And, I think the biggest question out there is folks like, we just want hope. We just want to know that we're going to get our kids back. It's been a challenging pandemic for everyone. And here's some really concrete steps that we've been taking that we have the ability to report out on tonight. A lot of changes have happened just this week, very quickly, but tonight's presentation, I hope will be very helpful to our families, to our parents, and to the school committee. So, Dr. Mealy.
Actually, we're going to kick off with Lorraine.
Oh, Ms. Marks.
Okay. All right. So this is North Andover Public Schools. Our stage is to increase in-person learning. And just to recap, to date, with credit to Marcy Bacuzzi and our high-needs special ed teachers, our high-needs special education students have been in person since the summer. And when they come to school, once the school year started, they are typically in 4 to 5 days a week. When the 2020-2021 school year started, we were completely remote, all grades, starting on September 16th. After that, we started on September 22nd with our kindergartners in hybrid, September 23rd for 1st through 8th graders, September 24th for 9th graders, and then September 28th for grades 10 through 12. Subsequently, we have had 20 hybrid weeks in school. That is from the week of September 28th through this week, February 22nd. In terms of our district and remote instruction, the high school has been remote for 3 weeks during that period of time. From October 23rd to November 26th, they were remote for 2 weeks. And from December 14th to December 18th, they were remote for 1 week. Our entire district has been remote for the 2.5 days prior to the holiday break and for the week following the holiday break, January 4th through 8th, which is 5 days, which across North Andover and the state, our numbers were very, very high. So just to recap, we have spent a fair amount of time in school in our hybrid model. Cheryl Barzak is now going to share with us some information on our COVID numbers district-wide.
So thanks, Lorene. When Mark's talked about starting to bring back our students, we put together this chart to show everybody where our positive COVID cases were in which grade. And so that's what this table shows district-wide. And as we talked earlier this evening in the elementary grades, it showed, we had less students with positive COVID cases, and it made sense that that's where we would start with the original plan. Now, I know they're going to talk about different plans tonight, but that's where we wanted to show that. And of course, at the high school level is where we had the highest rates of COVID cases. So this is the number of cases that we've had to date. I've talked at other meetings, and this is posted on our website twice a week, what our positive case rates are, the 278 total to date. People also asked about how many close contacts we've had. That number is much larger, over 1,000, and that data is also available. But for this evening, I just wanted to give kind of an overview of where the positive cases have been by grade and staff.
This one I'm going to review. I had sent out a survey, and that seems to be the theme of the night, surveys. This one was to all staff in the district to determine whether or not they would have the vaccine if it was made available. And we want to get a sense of how many people would do so. We also were able to find out that many, up to 56, have already received their first or second shot. And a large number of employees have indicated that they would take the vaccine if offered, if they do not already have it. If you add up the yeses and those who have already gotten their first or second shot, we're at 94% of our staff. Back to Cheryl.
So pool testing, a lot of people haven't asked about it. I've had almost no requests from parents or staff about implementing pool testing in North Andover, but it is one more mitigation strategy. Earlier, we talked about, big strategies: vaccine, masking, hand washing, social distancing, adequate ventilation. There's also contact tracing and the daily attestation where the staff and students, make sure they don't have symptoms, they haven't traveled, and haven't had close contacts before they come to school. So pool testing, another word for that is surveillance testing, is another mitigation strategy. What you try to find with this are your asymptomatic COVID positive people. And they use the word pool testing because instead of collecting one sample per person for a cost saving measure, like at $50 each for one sample, you would pool or batch 10 samples together, and they would all be tested in one pool, and then you would just pay the $150 for the 10 samples. Most tests are negative for asymptomatic people, so that's why you would pool them for cost savings. DESE offered this free program for districts, and we applied as a district, and we found out the week before vacation that we were selected to be part of the program if we wanted to. They cover the initial setup charge of $900, all of the shipping and all of the testing costs, but each district has to provide the staff and manpower to actually do the collections, do the following up tests, and do all of the administration work. They will cover the cost until April 16th, and then after that, as a district, we would pay the $50 per pool, another $500 for testing any positive pool, as well as shipping charges and monthly maintenance fees. So now we're at the stage, is it right for North Andover? Does it make sense for us? We've participated in a lot of DESE webinars. We've heard what other districts are doing, what the pros and cons are. And yes, I put together one question for whatever survey is going out next to really see, is this something that our parents are interested in as well as our staff? We are matched with a company called CIC Health. And the way it would work is we first have to receive consent from parents and staff. It's a voluntary program. CIC Health uses something called a nasal test. There is also a test called the saliva pool test, but we are partnered with a company that uses the nasal test. What that would entail would be for all of the people that consented, we would go to the classrooms and we would teach students and staff how to perform their own test. So it's, you take a short swab, it's an anterior swab, it's like a Q-tip, and there's 4 circles in each nostril, and then it's put into a tube and it is mailed off to the company, and we get results in 24 hours. So for example, if we send off 50 pools, if one pool comes back positive, those 10 people would be part of the positive pool and would now need to be tested. And so we would need to test them very quickly because they could potentially be a positive COVID case. And we would find a location because we want to keep those potential positives out of our schools. And the nurse would actually conduct a rapid positive test, and we would get the results in 15 minutes. So those 10 people would have to get to a location, and we would test them, and hopefully we would get the one person that was positive in the pool. That person would isolate, and that's how it works. I did talk to a nurse yesterday, and out of about 600 pools, 17 came back that were positive, and they only found a positive person in 10 of them. So there is that chance of having false positives or not picking somebody up, even though a pool was identified positive. During the DESE webinars that we attended, most of the districts that are currently doing this, it's very low positive rate, less than 1%. So as a district, we need to look at, right now our cases are very low in our district, our positive cases and our community. Does it make sense to spend time to get all of this, consents and go into our classrooms and do this testing for such low surveillance results? So if the program was offered back in November, I would be extremely enthusiastic because our numbers were so high. We had indoor winter sports, we had lots of clusters, but we don't have that right now. So at this point, if the survey from parents and staff shows a great interest, if they would if it provides peace of mind or, helps lower anxiety, we're ready. The paperwork's done. We've been accepted. We've been trained, but we'll have to, decide if that's how we want to go.
Ms. Barzak, just one point. I think, a lot like we've seen, I've heard about like the vaccine rollout, and there's been computer crashes. One of the things that DESE had done is, we put the application in on our deadline. We found out right just before break that we were approved. And I appreciate all the hard work you've done to attend every webinar. But they were going to end the funding in early March, and that just got extended till April yesterday. So I think I appreciate all your hard work, and I know that the state's not always timely in getting back to you or to the districts around some of this stuff.
I have a question, a clarifying question. So, Nurse Barzak, you said that you spoke with somebody and they had 17 pools that had positive. So there's 10 people in a pool, so then 170 people had to
Yes.
isolate, get a test, wait.
No. So you find out the next day, and you would immediately let those people know to get tested. They don't have to isolate until they get their retest.
Okay, so say you do the pool on Monday, Tuesday you get the results, and that same day you get in 170 people to have a test, and you find out how many are positive. Is that?
So this was over a course of time, but yes, you would get them all back.
Okay.
This was over a few weeks, right? Since they started the program, right? No. They typically only get 3 or 4 positives back a week. So usually it's about 30 or 40 people in that school. It's a much larger district than we would have. It all depends on how many people you test. If we test 5,000 people a week, that would be a lot different than if we tested 50, or 500, I'm sorry. Some districts only test staff. Some only do high school. They find elementary levels, there's almost no positives that come back pools out of the elementary. So, we're continuing to look at it.
Okay, all right. Do other committee members have questions about pool testing? Ms. Rich?
I just have a follow-up to that one. So, under the current hybrid, if you pool tested a group on Monday, you got the results on Tuesday, a different cohort is in the school then. Wednesday we're remote, so then they're not getting their second test until Thursday?
No, they have to go.
Oh, no, we would have them come to a location.
Okay, all right.
Yes, yeah, we wouldn't have a positive person out knowing that.
That's what I thought, but I wasn't sure. Thanks.
Yeah, so a parent would have to drive a student on their non-in-person day. We would have to make some arrangements after school hours, before school hours.
Okay, Mr. Teresi?
No questions.
Mr. McDevitt?
No questions.
Ms. Mably?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Carry forth.
Briefly, health office visits today, the positive rate today was 10, 8 in person, 2 in OLA. We had 24 close contacts because we had a hockey team with 14 students that need to be quarantined. Quarantine changes, this is I think later in the presentation when we talk about if we do come back at 3 feet for all of our students, which seems to be for K to 5, just a reminder that as we talked about earlier, the definition of a close contact doesn't change. So when there's a positive case, you still would have to quarantine anybody that was within 6 feet with or without a mask for more than 15 minutes. And so we would do the same process, meet with teachers, specialists, before and after school programs, transportation. To date, because we're all 6 feet, we've had very few people that have to quarantine in our classes because everybody's 6 feet. So at 3 feet, I just want to make sure everyone understands that there will probably be more close contacts in schools, and to ask parents to continue to partner with us. I think it's going to be really important. When I talked about the self-attestation, I know that's an automated email that comes every night, and it's been happening since September. Really pay attention to that every day, staff and students, that to not come to school with symptoms, because now if we have a positive case in an elementary classroom, it's a different situation now. Everybody that's sitting around that student would need to quarantine, and they could potentially, one option that some districts do is the entire class goes remote and for 2 weeks while the other, the quarantine students get caught up. So it's something we're gonna have to just really work on and make sure that we continue with our other mitigation strategies, because we're not gonna have that one. And I don't think I have anything else. We have these processes in place. We're just have to be a little bit, make adjustments with these new changes. Transportation was another option too. We're gonna have to have some types of plans for the buses, because year to date, we've only had one time when we had to quarantine people that were on a bus together. Now people will definitely be closer than 6 feet.
Before we go on, usually you do a health update once or twice a year or something. Now you do them, daily or whatever. But you mentioned data on health visits. And I know Dr. Chan talked about, they're seeing a great increase in, instances of anxiety and depression and all those other things. I know you track the purposes of your health testing or your health visits, and some are diabetes or whatever. Do you have any data that you can share? Are our school nurses hearing more and more about kids with anxiety, depression, and those other mental health challenges?
So I did pull that. I had that for our meeting yesterday. I don't have that in front of me, so I'm gonna have to kind of ballpark the numbers. But as you know, I do come every year, and from September to February, the health office visits last year were 28,000, plus. And, this year, I don't have the number, but it's like 5,000. So it's much, much lower. And so the same thing. So I did ask the nurses about anxiety, and we had a long conversation, because yes, we are not seeing that. And the students are with us 2 days a week. And I know, in Dr. Chan's office, there's more opportunity for parents to bring students for other reasons too. They're brought there for testing. I'm not sure why, but we're not seeing it as much. I don't know if it's the lower class sizes with only 10 students in the class, and the teachers are working out some of the situations. A lot of the students with high anxiety or school avoidance, maybe they're in OLA. So I'm not sure why our numbers are lower, but they are definitely lower.
Well, and they might not be anxious on the days that they're in school, if that's one of the things that's helpful.
Right.
I don't mean to take the corner on questions. Does anybody else have questions they want to ask Nurse Barzak at this moment?
Nope.
Okay, hearing none, carry forth.
All right, at this point, we're going to review the timeline. And this was, it's a combination of what was going to happen and what will now be the plan. And so we'll explain as we go. But just to kind of walk everybody through what we've been doing, ongoing principal and leadership meetings have been happening, facility meetings, union meetings, COVID task force, weekly meetings with DPH, keeping us abreast of all the guidance and the numbers, so we can make our decisions based on the data. February 12th, elementary principals provided data that we requested regarding the first step that we were anticipating in increasing in-person learning, which was first and second grade on Wednesdays. And so we had some things they had to figure out at each place, which was how much space is available, how many additional rooms might be needed, additional staff, the logistics, and all that. So they were working on that. From February 12th to the 22nd, we've been, and not just between that time period, we've been advocating strongly and asking our elected officials to advocate strongly for us to have the educators moved up in the vaccine process. So we'll continue to do that as well. February 18th, meeting with DPH to review the plan we had for the first and second grade and maintaining 6-foot distancing. They were on board with that. So we were continuing to move forward. Administration meeting with the union to discuss these proposed changes in the timeline for it. That was not a negotiation. The negotiation dates were set though, and we had already begun posting for the additional staff positions that would be needed on those Wednesdays. February 23rd, facilitate a meeting to plan parent input. I mentioned that. That's that group I talked about of the parents. February 24th, principal meeting. Again, all levels continue discussing opportunities for increased in-person learning. And it's not just at the elementary that these are taking place, but for all levels. And then on the 24th, there was also a joint meeting with North Andover and Andover regarding these issues. And Lorene was in that meeting. Lorene, do you want to just mention what was discussed there?
Yep. So I think Dr. Chan and Cheryl have already talked a lot about that, but it was primarily around the mental health concerns that they were seeing in their practice, what we're seeing in schools. Both districts shared different strategies and things that they had put into place to date to try to help address those needs. And the meeting was an hour, and we were not nearly done discussing everything. So another meeting will be scheduled, and we'll continue those conversations.
Thank you. And also on the 24th, the 24th is the date that we used for the survey results for staff in vaccination. They're dribbling in at this point. They came in very fast and furious when it first went out. We're getting 1 or 2 a day now, but we don't anticipate many more based on the number of staff we have, and we had a very good response to that survey.
So, Dr. Mailer, we have about 94% of staff that have said they want to be vaccinated, and it's important to know that our Board of Health, Brian LaGrasse and Carolyn Evertson, are working very closely with us to try to partner with a local health organization to get that done when the time's appropriate.
Yep. And then also on the 24th, the commissioner decided to...
This is yesterday. By the way, the 24th is yesterday.
Yesterday, exactly. It's funny because, you know, there are words we've added to our nomenclature, especially like asynchronous. Who knew what that meant before? But pivoting is definitely a word that we are using a lot more than we used to, and this was a great example of it. So yesterday, the commissioner made his comments and said it's the goals for K-5, and so we are pivoting. Tonight, we're meeting, as you know, to talk about what we're going to do moving forward. Also meeting at the same time as Brian LaGrasse, the DPH, is meeting with the medical staff and board. In addition, no later than March 1st, I mentioned this already, we want to do our initial parent survey, so that's Monday. We want that to go out specific to the elementary initiative, but also to shortly follow that for the other levels as well. And then, as I said, the group that I am kind of chairing with the parents for the parent input will get together again to determine how we want to follow up the survey information. March 1st is also a date that we set to meet with with NADA to begin negotiations to discuss the possible impact of the changes on staff and working conditions. March 3rd, we will be providing information to seniors. I think Mr. Jackson has already started that. He mentioned that earlier for both seniors and 8th graders regarding graduation. March 4th, we will have another school committee meeting, presentation of the elementary data that Ms. Marks will have. In addition to that, we'll give an update as to the plans as they come together to adjust to the commissioner's goals that have been set. March 6th, the items in gray are those things we were planning on doing, but now we're not recommending that we continue. We were talking about communicating to the community about grades 1 and 2 in that initiative, and I'll explain in a second why we're not doing that anymore. Opportunity to add more typical students in integrated preschool is something we are doing though, and we'll continue to work on. And so we don't now need to complete the hiring if it's decided that we're not going to proceed with the first and second graders coming in on Wednesdays. We believe strongly that our efforts should be geared towards the initiative of bringing K-5 students in fully. And so if we did move forward with the March 17th date of Wednesdays for first and second, we would see them for 3 Wednesdays before they were in fully anyway. And so we're now recommending that we just put our efforts towards getting K-5 in fully.
So can I just interrupt you for a second, Jim? So Greg introduced this announcement yesterday from Riley, like 45 minutes to an hour and a half ago, about what he said. So I just wanted, I think you need to reiterate that a shift was made, that Commissioner Riley, is that what he's called?
Yes.
Is going to now most likely request people. You
We-
said that
not just
earlier, but I
request,
feel like
right.
it was too long ago to set the context for this.
So I think it's important that, you know, we've been working hard to develop a plan. We know that the youngest kids are the kids that the state wanted to prioritize, and we did too. Especially those full remote Wednesdays. And we want to start with first and second grade. We're prepared to come here tonight to do that.
Which is what this is.
Which is in the gray, you know, and it would be 3 Wednesdays, and we were looking to bring back, which Jim will then show you, 3 to 5, because we thought after vacation. But yesterday at, you know, at 3 o'clock, Commissioner Riley did speak with the superintendents, and he informed us that he is going to try to get approval from his board. Now, it's not set in stone, the approval. He has to have his board actually vote on it, that would emphasize a phased-in approach for in-person learning. So his proposal is to bring children back. He says that the mitigation and COVID numbers are going well, and that he's encouraged and wants to phase in elementary first. He's recommending this phased approach for elementary, and then middle and possibly high school after that. He's looking to have elementary back in April, and you'll see what dates we've set. He also let us know that he believes teachers are next in line to get the vaccination, but had no date on that. He's understands that a variant could change these plans, and that we've done it. He complimented districts on doing a good job having kids in school, being cautious with measured and really strong mitigation strategies, but that we really need to focus on the youngest learners, which is right in line with what we wanted to do.
Right, but that explains why the stuff's grayed out.
Correct.
It was just so long ago that you.
But I think it's important, you know, I think there's a lot of people who are watching who are trying to figure this out, right? And I appreciate, you know, knowing and understanding the steps that were taken in terms of us, you know, trying to bring first and second grade back first. Based upon yesterday's change and yesterday's updates, there's new changes that are there, which I know are here, and I'm just not, I think it's going to be very confusing to families to be presenting things that might have happened that are now no longer on our plans.
Yeah, fair point, Mr. McDevitt. I think it's, you know, I think what we wanted to say is, you know, that although this was not set in stone, this is what we had planned on, our focus was and our priority. But to your point, you know, certainly, you know, we believe that the commissioner is going to get that passed, so.
Okay.
Any other part?
Just to reiterate, I think I agree with Mr. McDevitt. I think we all know the effort, at least this body knows, the effort that you and your team, sorry about that, that was me. The effort that you and your team have made to do this.
Yeah.
But I think it is confusing to even put it up there, because I think we should announce, period, we are not trying to bring back first and second graders on March 17th anymore.
Correct.
Correct.
Well,
full stop.
Yep.
Yep.
Right.
Because?
Because we are going to try to get everyone back in school, K through 5, full-time, 5 days a week on April 5th.
Right.
Full stop.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's it.
Correct.
Which is what's in the other.
Right.
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 Correct.
Yep, and we're going to get to that timeline, and we can certainly take that off. We don't
Right.
want to confuse anyone, you know.
Too late.
Yeah. Sorry, Mr. McDevitt, thank you for the.
No, but honestly, I think what Mr. Tristi said is you've been accused of not having any plans and not doing any work and not getting anything done. And so you're trying to show that you've been doing, every time you have something going, that you get a shift.
Well,
so that's,
The word pivot, you said the word pivot.
Yeah.
And honestly, what happened yesterday, and we, listen, I understand politics, I think, as well as anyone else in this room does. What the governor and what the commissioner said yesterday just shook,
to you.
Shook everything up, though.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, the MTA and the AFT, I mean, the headlines speak for themselves, are not on board with this right now. So we have, you know, as much as I think Commissioner Riley and Governor Baker wouldn't do this unless they thought the Board of Education was going to go along with it, which I'm sure they will. There's still some rough roads ahead of us with the MTA. Let's be clear about that.
Right. And to be honest, it's a matter of this is a vote that the school committee is going to make, and ultimately the school committee gets to decide if we want to proceed with the 1 and 2 on Wednesdays or not. And obviously it's apparent what that decision will be, but we didn't want to make that decision. That's why it was still in there as well.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it.
If I can just step in for a second and say, in October, we were talking about how to bring back first and second grade. And then there was this huge spike after Thanksgiving that just kept getting worse until the middle of December, when the state stepped in and said, oh, here's a new requirement. You have to do, this amount of live streaming. You have to do. So there have been so many contingency plans that have been written and not shared with the community because of this factor of confusion. So I appreciate that you're bringing forward this, even though we're not doing it. Because this is what the year has been like. It's been the administration making plans and ready to implement when something changes that makes it so we haven't been able to do it. So I am looking forward to the next step, but I understand why you're presenting us stuff that you can't do, even though it's confusing.
So I can't say it any better than Mr. Teresi did. Just stop. Moving on.
And I will not comment on it again.
Go to this other timeline.
Right, and so what? A couple of other things. We are in the process also of identifying opportunities for more in-person activities for seniors, which we think are important. We heard that earlier. And by March 18th, because we are continuing to work on the other levels as we're working on the logistics and what we need to do for elementary, we're going to present on March 18th our plans to address increased student in-person learning time for the middle school and high school as well. And then March 19th and April 16th would be great if we're able to partner with a health organization, as Dr. Gilligan mentioned earlier, to administer the vaccine to all of the staff that are willing to get it, which is a high number. The April 26th, I won't talk about. In May is the other thing that we're going to do, because sooner rather than later is better. By May, we want to present at one of the school committee meetings in May our plan for the fall. So we're going to be working on that in concurrence with what we're working on for this year. So that will be in May. That's the plan. Let's go back to here. And Ms. McDevitt was talking about a hopefully clearer timeline for people to follow. So this is also available in linked, and it just kind of identifies, you can see the meeting with local representatives as far as the vaccination goes. I'm not going to repeat it all. The commissioner making his announcement, our meeting tonight, parent survey, the staffing that we attempted, and we'll have to also make sure that one of the big decisions we have to find out is who's coming in and who's going to choose OLA, and that could have some impact because we might have to increase staffing to provide the OLA opportunity for our students. April and May, you see elementary returns on the 5th, fingers crossed, and then we have April vacation, fingers crossed, and then we have the reopening plan in early May that we will be presenting at the school committee meeting then. And then June and July, graduation, as Principal Jackson was talking about, having the graduation. Looking forward to that. And then the last day of school, and summer school begins, and we'll be dealing with recovery services and all that entails over the summer.
Can we go a little more slowly through the first two, especially to get at that survey, like you're talking about the K-5, for what people's decisions are? Yeah. Here.
Yep. So these are the same items that were on the other timeline. The initial parent survey will go out on Monday to the elementary parents, followed up.
To find out what?
Yeah, let's start there.
Yeah.
What can parents, K-5 parents, expect the kind of questions that are going to be on that survey?
Mm-hmm. So basically we're asking, here's the situation. We're trying to get our students in and it's going to be 3 feet or more, but it could be as low as 3 feet. And are you going to have your child attend, or are you going to choose OLA? That's our biggest question. Transportation. We need to know, we know how many buses we have, and we know how many students we're obligated to transport. Of those, how many are going to ask us to transport them, as opposed to will provide transportation themselves? Because not only do we have to know how to do our bus routes and redo those, but we also need to know what pickup and drop-off is going to look like and how hectic that might be. One of the things that we've been doing is adding the Car Rider Pro that has been successful at Bradstreet to our other elementary schools. The weather hasn't cooperated, but that'll be coming in to a few of our schools shortly.
Any questions about lunch or Kids Stop or stuff like that there on there?
Right. Well, it will certainly let them know what that means as far as lunch, because
That's tricky.
It's tricky, and we'll have to know who is going to participate, knowing that lunch is in the building instead of, them being released and going to lunch. There's also snacks in the buildings. One of the other things that's going to happen is we're going to ask about I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. What other questions might you think?
I think we were going to make sure that people understood what that close contact situation would be.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so we want people to understand that, for instance, at the elementary level, it's much different than middle school and high school. If a student tests positive, there's a lot larger impact for everybody, including elementary. You might have a class that has to go remote because at 3 feet you have more contacts, and you don't want to have 5 or 6 students who can't be in class, so you have the whole class go remote, and then they can be taught synchronously remote. But when you talk about middle school and high school, now you're multiplying by the number of classes they have, and that's going to impact a much larger number of students. So that's why it's more complicated at the middle and high school levels.
And what's the time frame on the survey? How quickly are parents going to have? How much time they have to fill that out and get back to us?
We find, we'll probably for the week. We find that most responses come in pretty quickly, and then they dribble in after that. So that should be enough time. The other big part of the survey is the opportunity for open-ended responses, in that, please let us know what other concerns you might have, what you think we haven't thought of, what questions you have, and we're going to take those and compile them and then provide to the community the answers to those questions.
I know you probably don't have this level of detail yet, since we just came up with this yesterday. What about the option of having lunch outside? Because in April, the weather starts to get nicer.
Yep.
And you've got
Yep.
May.
So I just had a conversation with my administrative assistant, Michelle McHugh. We had rented tents, as people probably know, for chorus and the band at the middle school and high school, large tents. We are now looking at the same tents for those purposes at the middle school and high school, and there's not a large delta between renting them for the period of time we would be renting them and buying them. So we're looking at buying them, in case we certainly have uses as we go for those. And we're also looking at purchasing tents, 4 or 5 for each elementary school, so that we not only have them, but for this season coming up, that we have an opportunity for the students to eat outside when the weather allows.
Great.
Yep.
But is it all right if we keep asking questions?
Go right ahead.
Go right ahead, Amy.
Back to what Mr. Teresi was saying. So the survey is basically, I know it's changed since the one you'd already written, but that thing is, you need to choose OLA, or stay in OLA or leave OLA, or you're going to choose full K-5, we're just talking K-5, full day in person with meals, with lunch, and if you don't want that,
At 3 feet.
at 3 feet.
Potentially 3 feet.
If you don't want that, you have OLA.
Yeah, so it's an important understanding that people have that you're only two choices. There's not a hybrid choice. It's either you're in fully, if we're in fully, or you're OLA.
Which is what we're saying that Riley's saying is going to happen.
Yeah, so with his regulation, the kids would have to return in K to 5 when this passes, and then, that's what we would have to do. And operationally, we'd have to figure out, each school's a little unique.
Right.
How are we going to do lunch? How are we going to do these things? And these
Right.
are the things that would principals would go back to their teams and would support from central office get done to make happen. Because
But that's so. What Mr. Trissy was saying is, are we going to, before we make that decision, are we going to ask the parents, like, would you be good at 3 feet, just not with meals, and frankly the teachers as well, and before we made the decision, or do we think that even if we, as North Andover, chose to have a day where you go home at 12:30 and eat lunch at home, that's not going to be acceptable by the state?
Well, I'm just going to piggyback onto that a little bit. I mean, one of the things that I think Dr. Chen said was, he was comfortable with students eating at the 6-foot distance, right? But didn't necessarily, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but didn't necessarily feel super comfortable with them at 3 feet, right?
Right.
So what is that going to look like at each of the elementary schools, right? And if it is a great day, I know some of the students do go outside, whether they, have picnic tables or, some of them are sitting down. I think that's important for parents to know and understand as well, right? Because that is a consideration, right? And we don't want kids to go all day without eating as well, right?
Right.
We don't want there to be a
Well,
fear of that.
and I would add in that the state has said that they're going to give us guidance on mealtime in the next week or two.
They did, okay.
Yeah, so A, they are saying it would be full days, and then B, they expect lunch guidance for them to come out in 2 to 3 weeks, is what the commissioner said.
That's awfully late.
But for us, that's where our folks have to go back and figure out a way to do it and do it safely.
And what date would parents have to decide by, whether they're doing it full or OLA?
Well,
Trimester's about to end.
I think it's important that, April 5th is the date,
Right.
the target date from the state. And it has not been passed, so it has not been set in stone, but we're anticipating.
It's our target date.
This will anticipate. So, he's recommending surveys over the next couple of weeks. We think it's important to get a survey out now that will give us a better sense of the numbers. Because as he mentioned, for some districts, they've had surveys in the past, but it really is important, and it comes down to, like, if it was going to be, you're comfortable with your student less than 6 feet, would need to know, and that OLA would be an option the other way. So to answer that question, I think we'd have to pick a time to end that survey.
I was going to say the same thing, that, as we're working out the details, we have to kind of work back and say, okay, by this date, this is when we need to know by.
Well, when does the trimester change?
March, that's the problem. It's
March 8th was my understanding of what we had been looking at for a timeline.
Right, but this is new information.
Yeah, we're not going to have that. I mean, the survey is informative for us as policymakers. But at some point, whether it's March 20th or 25th, if we're going to go back on April 5th, the administration needs to know how many kids are going to be in the class.
Right.
So I think that, I'm sorry, Andrew.
No, go ahead.
No, I just think that the survey is to get a baseline feel of how the parents feel about it. I mean,
I don't think it is. I think the survey is make your choice.
No, it's not. The survey is not make your choice.
Okay,
The
good.
survey is
All
not
right.
make your choice at all. It should be, we
I'm
need to
asking.
find out how many people we think are going to be there. Because, I mean, honestly, I really respect the petition that went around about people going back to school and stuff. But now it's real. Now it's real. Now you got to say, I'll have my kid there 5 days a week, 7 hours a day at 3 feet or possibly less.
Yep.
As opposed to just signing the petition.
Correct.
And once you're in, and once you're out, you're out. Is that accurate? I mean, you got to make a decision by the end of March to do this the rest of the year.
But it's important to note that your response to the survey is not
Yes.
your choice.
The survey is not binding. The survey
Okay.
is definitely not binding. The survey is going to inform us, inform the administration how to
Good,
finalize
the plan.
And I think one of the key things, I don't know where the camera's looking at me, but, the 15th, right? So, the survey's going out, right? The goal is that we kind of get that back, right? And then we have to identify what staff are needed in order to make this, right? It could be that in each of the elementary schools, we need to hire 2. It could be that we need to hire 10. We don't necessarily know that right now based upon some of the results that are kind of coming back. I think we have some benchmarks of what those numbers are. And, we have in there, target date of filling those positions on the 15th of the month. In preparation to get them ready and trained and all of that stuff, so that people know and understand that when their children come back on April 5th, 5 days a week, that they are coming back to as safe of an environment as we can possibly provide for them. And I think, I spent a lot of time with Lorene looking at this as well, and one of the key things that I think, as I looked at this, was the 19th, right? And so we've talked an awful lot about this, Dr. Gilligan, and I just, want to be very clear that we have been working to try to secure a partnership with somebody locally, I'm not going to name anybody right now, to have vaccinations for our teachers, right? Not go find them on a website, not go drive somewhere, to have them locally here, so that maybe I go to the nurse's office and I'm able to get vaccinated in my building, or maybe I drive somewhere in town where I'm able to get that done. We want to ensure that the staff are vaccinated. We know, I don't remember the number, I think it was about 595 that wanted or needed to have that first shot. I don't think that, this plan necessarily, without that piece in there, I think that gives parents some major peace of mind. I think that gives faculty some peace of mind. And when Mrs. Picard and I begin negotiations on the 1st, which is Monday, on any changes that need to be made with the union, I think that that's an important thing to have out there, right? And I don't want to underestimate or have enough emphasis on that as well.
Yeah, and I just want to go back to something that Mr. McDevitt just said regarding staffing, because it's not just people in the classrooms. We're going to be doubling the number of students in our buildings. And Dr. Chan mentioned earlier that we had done a very good job, and proud of the job that we have done. Our staff has done a tremendous job in keeping our students and the staff safe. But we have to make some adjustments to the increased activity in the buildings and maintaining social distancing and following the protocol. So that's another thing we have to keep in mind as well.
Yep. And I think, go ahead.
Oh, I just want to add too, like when you're asking the questions about parents making a decision, we do need time to prepare. For example, in just about every one of our elementary schools, we have at least one teacher in that school who teaches part-time hybrid and part-time OLA. That cannot change on a dime. So we need more than it can't be late March that we know when these numbers are. I know that, sometimes it seems simple, like we're just going to open the schools and the kids are going to come in and it's going to be like it used to be, but we're not set up like it used to be. So there's a lot of planning, a lot of juggling of teachers based on those numbers. Our specialist schedule may need to change. We have to figure out how that is going to impact our OLA teachers. So there are lots and lots of pieces here that are involved. It was like when we had asked parents to make the decision about hybrid or OLA earlier in the year. We recognize it's difficult, but we cannot make our plans and make schools safe and have this scheduled correctly if we wait until the very end of March for an April 5th start date. So I just wanted to clarify that a little bit.
I couldn't agree with you more, Lorraine. I think you're absolutely right. But I think it's important that you need to tell the parents what that date is. I mean, between you and Jim and the team, if it's March 15th or it's March 18th or whatever it is, the parents need to know that, because even with their own family, I mean, I know, there's a lot of two-parent families. There's a discussion between the two parents of what they're going to feel comfortable with. So you got to give them as much time as you can, but you also need to, you're absolutely right. If you need to hire staff or hire more people, and obviously the staffing levels are going to differ from school to school. I mean, you could have some schools that have a lot more old kids than others. So I absolutely agree with you, and you're spot on. But if you know what that hard date is, the drop dead date, let the parents know as soon as possible.
I would also say over-communicate. I know that a lot of parents were complaining that they missed the date, been choosing hybrid and OLA before. They didn't know. So let's just bombard them.
Yeah, and
with
I
the
think that's
date.
important, and I think that the other point is, it may not even, you know, one of the issues may not even be hiring. It just might be adjustment of staff. You know, and that's the point that the commissioner made the other day, that's one of the things that could happen.
And, you know, we try to evaluate what we're doing, and you put your parent hat on and say, well, what questions would this raise? And one of the questions that I thought of was, if you're sitting at home right now and you're saying, well, if you were working on plans for elementary, what much more do you need to do? And I think what people need to realize is the plan that we had ready to go had students, it was the plan we had developed in the fall, that it had students leaving and not having lunch at school. And now it's all day, so we have to make a lot of adjustments in order to make that happen.
Yep.
I think there's a lot of parents right now who, I'm sure there's a gazillion questions that they have. But I think, you know, one of the other things just to kind of keep in mind, right? We know that there are communications and guidelines coming from the state regarding middle and high school. We're expecting those in the next couple of weeks. Even without those, we are still trying to make plans and preparation to bring middle and high school students back, and what that may or may not look like. And we are looking for that at
on the
18th,
Yep.
right? I'm just cross-checking my calendar here. On the 18th of March. So, you know, roughly, you know, 2.5 weeks or so away.
Correct. And like Ms. Picard said, we'll be looking to get information survey-wise that way. You know, the middle school and the high school, you know, on the 18th, that's really looking at an update, you know, about what that could possibly be. And, you know, the state may have information by then or not about plans for middle or high school. But I think it's important to be able to have an update then about what those opportunities are going to look like.
All right. Any other questions on March?
I think you should put on the 18th, that's my last school committee meeting, and just like put that as a benchmark.
Oh.
We can always add one to the.
I'll highlight it. I'll put a little party hat.
Silly you.
That's actually a quick point to note, that we may be adding additional meetings as well as guidance comes. I know you want more. But, you know, as guidance and recommendations and new information comes out, right? You know, I think in order for parents to make a decision, you know, we can't say, well, we presented it on the 25th and, you know, then a meeting on the 4th and then make your mind up, right? I mean, like, there may need to be another presentation. What is it going to look like at Franklin Elementary with Mr. Clark to have lunch, right? And, you know, how's that structured?
That answer, particularly, Andrew, would not come from school committee. That would come from Joe Clark.
I understand that, but that still needs to be presented to people. And if it's not being presented to people, then it's impossible for them to make a decision.
Right.
But I think what Helen might be saying is it doesn't have to be presented at a school committee meeting. It can be presented at a Franklin meeting, at a Thompson meeting, at a.
On the website.
Right.
Yeah,
It
one of the
could be,
things.
and
A
there could be
forum,
a
right.
summary that's here,
Right,
right?
right, or combination of the two.
In-depth logistics of that, I would hope Mr. Clark and all of our principals are communicating at a building level,
That's right.
I don't need to know that 11:03, somebody is moving from here to there to do that, right? I mean, yes, in theory I do, but I don't think we need to go through that here. High level, what does it look like?
Yes.
Absolutely. Before I vote on a plan, I want to know that these kids are safe.
Right.
Right. And one of the things that we've heard loud and clear is that don't assume we know you're planning. That communicate with us what you're what you're trying to accomplish, what the roadblocks are, what the what has to happen in order to make it possible. So as Holly was saying, as much as possible, over-communicate is what we're being asked to do. Yep.
So I probably should have included in my chair's report that I did ask all the members their availability for March 11th earlier this week, and I have not heard from any committee members that they are not available on March 11th, so that's a tentative date for us to meet. I did not ask your availability for the 25th of March, but please do let me know your availability since the world keeps shifting
That is our
beneath
next
us.
meeting. Isn't it? 25th?
No, 18th.
Oh, okay.
I'm good. I can
The
do
18th
not
we're
the
scheduled
25th.
to meet. And, you know, as well as we do negotiations, we may need to have an executive session, but those are, we have different, you know, obligations for executive session than open session.
Yep.
Okay, April.
Okay, questions
then-
on April?
Yeah, April and May, again, fingers and toes crossed, April 5th, that we have elementary in. And then in the same spirit I was just talking about with regards to letting people know what's going on, our goal is certainly to have something in May regarding the fall opening. And we're hopeful that these things happen to get us in more so that we are positioned for, as dare say, back to normal in the fall.
I think, Jim, on your other slides, you mentioned some thought process. I know a lot depends on DESE as far as middle school than high school.
Mm-hmm.
Is there like a date in mind that you think that at least the committee will be discussing? I probably will not be here at that point, but.
Middle school and high school?
There's a lot, well, there's a lot,
The
yeah.
18th is when we're
Right,
discussing.
so going back, that we
Oh, I'm
plan
sorry.
to present
An update.
some.
Oh, right there,
some-
I'm sorry.
Yep, for the 18th.
But you're saying some ideas, you're not saying this is the plan for, because you're waiting for DESE, is that
Well,
right?
There isn't a date for that, right? The
Right.
plan, we're hoping that there's a preliminary plan.
Just not
the
On that
18th,
date, correct,
With the date hopefully named at that, or identified at that point.
right.
Yeah, the other thing we heard loud and clear from middle school and high school parents, they want to know that you're trying for them as well.
Right.
I mean, the date's been set now, right, by the commissioner for elementary. They haven't addressed it, but we're going to work on it, and we're going to try our best to see what we can do for them as well.
Well, I like the fact that Principal Jackson is talking about outdoor graduation, which would be a small consolation if they never get back to in-person schooling, but, you know, that's a big cap to their 4 years of hard work, so.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's
Well,
important, and
and
we'll
the-
invite you back, Mr. Teresi. I think I think you get to come back.
I think another
Do I
important
have to go to
piece
town
that we
meeting?
are looking for at the high school is opportunities for seniors to be in person for activities, whatever those activities are, not necessarily for academics, but some opportunities through the spring for seniors to be back in school together.
Right, for both, yeah, possible in person for all high school, but also activities for the seniors. Yep. I don't think there are probably any questions on this one.
On June, no.
No. And then we've talked about this, the initial survey going out on Monday. Main thing being in person or the OLA, how they feel about it, so we understand that. Transportation, and then giving them the opportunity to express any concerns or other questions that we haven't addressed tonight or that they just have now thought of. And then the subsequent surveys following that will be geared towards the other planned initiatives that we have. And that's it.
I guess one other thing I think is important to make sure is clear is that with this plan for all in K-5, April 5th, that is an option, or the OLA is an option. There's not a, I want to stick with what I'm doing now option.
Correct.
We cannot offer school 3 ways. So that, I think it's, I just want to make sure that's I wanted to state it outright, that,
Yep.
because it,
And that's, I know some people first, some other superintendents may have expressed some frustration with the commissioner about, coming out with this yesterday afternoon. The 5th is aggressive, and they're gonna have different guidelines, but it is, would be in person or online.
right. I mean, I think it's
And even if
understandable
the
you can't
commissioner
do it.
facts that date up, we're still targeting the 5th in North Andover.
I mean, that's what we have right now. We're shooting for that 5th as the date. You know, and I think that's what it is, and I think he'll pass that next week or the week after.
And I think it goes without saying, I think people will probably be concerned, you know, the goal is not to change teachers on any of our students as well, right? I mean, I think if somebody who is OLA, you know, there may be some modifications or something like that, but for students who are returning to school, you know, it is the teacher that they know, that they have, you know,
I don't know
developed a
how we can
relationship.
guarantee that, Andrew, because if we have some teachers that are teaching half the day OLA and half the day in person, somebody's going to lose that teacher. And I don't think we can say, if you make your choice to be in person, you get the teacher that you want. And if you decide to stay in OLA, you get an automatically changed teacher. I think it's really a tricky staffing situation.
I think it is a staffing consideration, but I think for students, we need to try to be upfront and honest if there is any change, and hopefully there are extremely minimal ones. And these students have developed relationships and bonds with these teachers, and I think it's unfair to them, and I think it's unfair to the teachers to change that after, I don't know, 7 months.
I absolutely hope that, you know, most students can stay with their teacher.
Andrew, I couldn't agree more. I mean,
But
it's
if
been a
they teach
challenging
OLA
year
and
enough.
other
Kids, we want the consistency, what kids know. You know, there may be some changes that we have to make, but I mean, it's a priority to keep consistency, what we know, bring these kids back. And the bottom line is, you know, the state will order, you know, if this becomes the law, which it looks like it will become, he'll have the authority to do so as the commissioner. You know, we're going to have to do it, you know, so we're going to have K-5 back, and we're going to do everything in our power to keep that consistency of the teacher, those relationships. Those are really, really, really important. You know, we don't want to scare anyone by saying, you know, the commissioner had mentioned he knows that in some places this could really change dynamics for schools, but I think there's nothing more important than where our kids go to school, the relationships that they have, and we'll do everything to preserve that.
I wanted to add too, we talked about how, you know, the administrators and the teachers have done so much to make sure that we've had a safe school year thus far. And it's just so important to me to add in that the students and parents have been so instrumental in that as well. You know, the students have been very mask compliant. You know, we've heard over and over again how much teachers appreciate that students are doing that, that students doubted whether or not their classmates were going to be mask compliant, and they really have been. So I really just want to say, you know, a shout out to our families, to our students, for making sure that they've been able to be safe and for making good choices since the Christmas spike that we haven't yet seen a spike after February vacation. I hope we certainly don't. Are there any other questions on this presentation?
No, thank you very much, though.
Okay. We don't have any votes to take, and so our next agenda item is adjournment, but I do want to have an opportunity if there's anything that members want to report out before we adjourn, and I'll start with Ms. Lynch.
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Teresi?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Mr. McDevitt?
I just want to say thank you to all the parents who tuned in for the meeting tonight. And, you know, I think that there'll be as much information coming as possible. The members of this community are never shy in terms of calling and emailing or texting when they have questions. So, you know, we will do our best to get those answers to you as they start to come forward. And I do just want to take a quick moment to celebrate the fact that I think it's called Fall 2 is started this week. So there's a new round of sports that are going at the high school. And I know that there's a tremendous number of student athletes who are very excited to get back on those fields. So good luck to them.
Thank you, Mr. McDevitt. Ms. Mably?
I am going to let it lie there for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You all have heard plenty from me tonight, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn until next week, the 4th of March.
So moved.
Second.
So I believe that was moved by Mr. McDevitt and seconded by Ms. Lynch.
Correct.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And so roll call vote, Ms. Lynch,
Yes.
Mr. Teresi,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
Yes.
Ms. Mably,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. So that's 5-0 to adjourn at 9:52 p.m. on February 25th, 2021. Thank you.